the City of Bloomington Board of Zoning Appeals for November the 16th, 2023. Roll call, please.
Ballard.
Here.
Burrell.
Here.
Clapper.
Here.
Throckmorton.
Okay. We have one set of minutes to be approved. That's October 19th, 2023.
For October 19th, 2023.
Second.
Okay. Any corrections, changes? No? Okay. We are ready for a vote, please.
Burrell.
Yes.
Clapper.
Yes.
Throckmorton.
Okay.
Ballard.
Did he say yes?
Yes.
Okay. So those minutes are approved. Reports, resolutions, and communications.
Good evening, Jackie Scanlon, Development Services Manager. The only report we wanted to let those of you know who aren't on the Plan Commission, that Mr. Rooker, our longtime attorney, has moved on to another position with the state. So we have Colleen Newbill as helping us here tonight. And we're so grateful that you're here, Colleen. And yeah, so we just wanted to let you know of a face you might not recognize. And that's all we have. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome. Okay, this evening, we have one petition that is continued to the December hearing, and that is AA-17-22, Joe Kemp Construction, LLC, and Blackwell Construction, Inc. This evening's petitions are as follows. V-32-23, Buckingham Properties, LLC, CU/V-33-23, Spiraden Strategos, CU-35-23, Latitude 39 North Properties, LLC, AA-36-23, Indiana Army National Guard, AA-38-23, Joseph Davis, and V-40-23, Scott Andrews. Okay, so we are ready to proceed with V-32-23, Buckingham Properties, LLC. Staff report, please.
Hello, I'm Gabriel Holbrow, zoning planner for the Planning and Transportation Department. Going to present the staff report. Give me a moment while I pull it up. Okay, this is a proposal for the site at 503 North Rogers Street, near here, just west of here. The site area is approximately 5.4 acres. The current zoning is mixed-use downtown within the Showers Technology Downtown Character Overlay, MD-ST. The comprehensive plan designation is downtown. The existing land use is a salvage or scrapyard. It's the site that is currently known as Bloomington Iron and Metal, BIM. It also has in the past, and the current ownership is under Fell Iron. Many people know it by that name as well. So the proposal is to take the existing site there and develop it with a total of 4 buildings. So in this overview of the site plan, Rogers Street is to the right. That's the east. You can see that the frontage on Rogers Street is relatively narrow because it curves down there on the right side. Along the north, That curved line is the Beeline Trail. To the left on the west is Fairview Street, and across Fairview Street from this site is Rev. Ernest Butler Park, a city park. And then to the south, there's that little part that extends to the south, and that has frontage on 9th Street. The proposal includes four total buildings, three of a larger size, and then the fourth is down there at the bottom along 9th Street. So all buildings are proposed to have residential dwelling units throughout the buildings. So they're numbered, you can see in the proposal and in the staff report, they're numbered. Building 1 is on the left there. Building 2 is in the middle of the site and doesn't have street frontage, although it has a little frontage on the Beeline Trail. Building 3 is the one on the right closest to Rogers, and Building 4 is the smaller one. The smaller one is proposed to have townhouse dwelling units, townhouse style dwelling units. It still falls within the category of multifamily dwelling in the UDO. And the others, primarily dwelling units, but buildings 2 and 3 include some non-residential uses, and building 3, you can see there, includes a parking garage, as well as the blue area there is a leasable non-residential space that could be a commercial tenant, something like that. So the variances they're requesting there are 5. The first is to allow dwelling units, residential dwelling units on the ground floor. In this district, the Showers Technology District, residential units are not allowed on the ground floor. The general idea behind that is the purpose of the district is is to be a technology park, to create the opportunity for business uses, offices, laboratories that are focused on technology innovation. That's really the purpose of the district. So residential can be part of that, but the district really wants to have room for that non-residential development. There's also the issue of privacy for residents on the ground floor, which applies throughout the downtown. So this proposal has dwelling units on the ground floor, which is not, doesn't meet the use-specific standards for multifamily dwelling in this district, hence the request for a variance. The second variance is a setback variance from Rogers. You're probably more familiar with setback variances to be less than the minimum. This is a request to be more than the maximum. So there is a maximum front setback in this district of 15 feet. And from Rogers Street, the proposed building 3 is quite a bit more than 15 feet. The exact number, somewhere in the staff report, but well more than 15 feet. As you can see, the way that the building, the site, the property tapers down as it gets close to Rogers Street, there's different theoretical ways to deal with that. They have dealt with that by moving the building back, hence the need for a variance from the maximum setback.
Could you just take a moment and find how far back it is?
Yeah, sure, certainly. The details are a little confusing because the setback is measured not from it's not from the pavement, it's not from the existing legal right-of-way, it's from the proposed right-of-way in the transportation plan, which is different from the current right-of-way. But essentially, to pick something that's fixed, the center line of the road, which generally aligns with the yellow lines in the middle, the minimum 15-foot setback would be would be 148 feet from the street center line. And they're proposing to go, that would be 57 feet from the center line. Let me say that again. From the existing center line to the maximum allowed setback would be 57 feet. They're proposing to go to 148 feet, which is 91 feet farther back than the maximum front setback. So it's good to have some numbers to get an idea of the scale of what they're asking for. The third requested variance is to not have upper floor facade step backs. And let's go to a building facade image. This is building 1 from Fairview Street from the west. We may be flipping back through these. This is a view of building 2, sort of from the interior of the site. Actually, the part that you see just on the left of the screen, the sort of brick-looking one, that's actually the end of building 1, but the one on the right, that's building 2. This is building 3, as seen approximately from Rogers Street, and then building 4 along 9th Street. So if we back up and look at building 3 from Rogers Street, in this district, there's a requirement that the first 2 floors be at, comply with the maximum setback, and then upper stories beyond the first 2 have to step back at least 15 feet. So what's required by code is to have a facade that's here on the first 2 floors, and then to step back. As you can see, the proposal is to have it go up, with some architectural detail, but basically go up from the ground all the way up to the roof, as without the step back. Because there's that standard in the UDO, this design requires a variance. The fourth variance has to do with the percentage of windows and doors on primary facades, and I'll jump back to the view of building 1. The requirement for first floors of buildings facing streets is that 40% of the ground floor facade has to be transparent glass or framed facade open area. Facing the Beeline Trail, so that would apply to the parts that face the Beeline Trail, it's 60% on the ground floor. And they are proposing to, for some of the facades, for example, this is building 3 again from Rogers Street. As you can see, the ground floor meets this. It's well over 40%, might be more than 60%. So for this facade, it's compliant, we're fine. But some of the facades, including building 1, the west facade facing Fairview, they're proposing 20%. 20% is allowed on upper stories. So they're not pulling that 20% out of a hat. It's based on the standard that would apply to a different part of the facade, and has to do with having the ground floor residential units. So it's tied to the first request for a variance. As you'll remember, the first requested variance is to allow ground floor dwelling units. So this one is, to summarize, is requesting a variance to allow windows that match with ground floor residential units. And finally, the fifth requested variance has to do with facade articulation. In the downtown districts, including this one, there are requirements that parts of the facade come out and parts of the facade recess in to break up so it's not a single giant block that is imposing on you. They are, as you can see, they are providing those recesses and projections, but the standard is based on the total facade length. So the Standard is offsets by a minimum depth of 5% of the total facade length at a minimum of 5 feet. So it depends on which building facade we're talking about, but for example, this one on building 1 facing Fairview Street, the total length of the facade is 367. 5% of that would be nearly 18 and a half feet. And they're proposing less than that because that amount of taking away that the 18 and a half feet or more would limit how much usable width you have within the building. And because they want dwelling units on either side of a central corridor, an arrangement of double upper floors with double units on either side of the corridor, or ground floor units for that matter, doesn't work with recesses and projections of that much. So they're instead proposing recesses and projections along there of a minimum of 5 feet along all of them. So that's the 5 variances. The staff report goes into the highest level of detail that we could. The staff report and the petitioner statement go into the highest level of detail that we could to really explain all those in as much detail. I would like in this presentation to summarize into some of the key issues. The first is the biggest one is ground floor residential units. That's what's really driving the whole package of variance requests. And so the question is, are ground floor residential units appropriate for this location based on the 3 criteria for variances? To summarize a ton of detailed analysis, the petitioner's case is yes, there are practical difficulties because of uniqueness of the property, and a variance to allow ground floor residential units is the minimum relief necessary to overcome those practical difficulties. Staff generally agrees with that assessment, with the added part of the added part of time. That is to say that the purpose of this district is to provide for the growth of the technology park. And right now, there is not a shortage of land available for those kind of non-residential uses. The lack of availability to place the kind of non-residential technology uses that we want there, that's not what's holding back the development of the technology park right now. Or not to say that it is being held back, but that's not that's not the difficulty at this time. But it could be in the future. And also at this time, there is a pressing need for housing in the city, particularly affordable housing. So allowing this will not, allowing ground floor residential units won't lose, you won't be giving up, the UDO won't be giving up the benefits of the district, and it will be resolving the practical difficulty. So based on staff's addition of the idea of time, we do have a proposed condition, and we'll get to that in a moment. Then the other issue that goes along with it, so the other big issue is coming from this idea of having them being primarily residential, there's these questions of the facade design. And essentially what the question is are these facade designs, with the criteria of variances, there's the third criterion, of course, is the hardest one to meet. That's the practical difficulties due to uniqueness of the property, and that the variance would relieve the practical difficulties. If you find that there are practical difficulties that justify the first variance, staff's recommendation is it's not at all hard to find those same practical difficulties, meet that criteria for the other variances having to do with facade design. In other words, so the third criterion, if you answer that it's okay for the first variance, that should apply to the other ones, is staff's recommendation. So then the question is about the first two variances, will be injurious to the community or injurious to neighboring properties. And so to answer that question, are these facade designs as good or better than what the UDO is asking for? It's different from what the UDO is asking for, hence the need for the variance. And that's you could say it's an aesthetic judgment within the bounds of the criteria for a variance, but it comes down to an aesthetic judgment about these facade designs. The petitioners designed these facades with the intent to have these be better than what than the minimum the UDO would require. Staff's recommendation is that these appear to be at least as good as what the UDO would require, so are not injurious. But that's the other major question. So I just wanted to highlight those two major questions. Is there a practical hardship that providing ground floor dwelling units can resolve? And are these facade designs not injurious to the public? So this is a summary of the full proposed findings, which are in the staff report. So the text up there is not the entire text that's in the staff report. If we want to go over that, we can go over that. But just as bullet points, for the first criterion, granting all 5 variances will not be injurious to the public, health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. For each of the UDO standards that the petitioner is requesting relief from, the proposed project achieves or addresses the goals by other means, ensuring that the intent of the UDO is upheld. For the second criterion, that the use and value of the area adjacent to the property will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner, staff's recommended finding is that there will not be any substantial adverse impacts. None of the requested variances will limit the current use or future redevelopment of any surrounding properties. And then for the third one, again, this is a summary. There's more text in the staff report, but that there's unique property configuration that is peculiar to the property, including relatively narrow frontage on Rogers Street compared to the depth and total area of the property, and limited opportunities for access for 9th Street and Fairview Street. It results in limited access and limited visibility for the site. These create practical difficulties. That strict application of the UDO would result in practical difficulties, including practical difficulties for the specific use and site design that the petitioner has proposed. It would also propose practical difficulties for any site design because of the shape and multiple frontages. And finally, the requested variances provide the minimum relief necessary to overcome these practical difficulties. So I want to go into, the recommendation is for approval, and staff is recommending 9 conditions. That's a lot. But I'd like to go through them. The first, which we haven't discussed here yet tonight, but is in the staff report, because of the size of the buildings, the project will need to earn affordable housing incentives and sustainable development incentives in order to have it. So this is going to apply whether we put this condition on or not, but it's good to have that explicit, that this site design will require earning those incentives. And number 2, something shown on the site plan, and it has to do with the access for the site. So we're recommending as a condition for these variances is they're showing a new multi-use trail along the generally along the southern part of the site that would provide a direct link from Rogers Street at the Beeline Trail to Rev Butler Park. Because that's part of the submission here, and because it relates to the access for the site, we're recommending putting that as a condition on here. These are two things that the petitioners have already said they're going to do. We recommend adding them as conditions. So then the third one is a version of a condition that usually goes on variances that they are approved only for the proposed buildings, as shown on the submitted conceptual site plan. Any future additions or new structures on the property shall comply with all applicable standards in the UDO. That's just to clarify that this variance is for this proposal, right? So if there were a different proposal here or they wanted to add new things, it's not saying that ground floor residential is just categorically allowed anywhere at all on this property in the future as if we were rezoning it. You're granting the variance for this based on this being the minimum relief necessary to overcome the practical difficulties. The fourth, this is long, and this gets to the time issue. So in essence, this condition would make the ground floor dwelling, variance for the ground floor dwelling units a little bit less like a typical variance, which runs with the land in perpetuity, and make it a little bit more like a lawful non-conforming use. That is, if there comes a time when the property is no longer using, taking advantage of that variance to actually provide dwelling units, then this condition would make the variance disappear. So it recommends doing that through a mechanism of a zoning commitment, not strictly necessary since your decision alone would be binding, but putting it in a zoning commitment, make sure that anyone doing title research or deed research will notice it, so make sure that more likely to be followed. Prior to the issuance of a recommendation for final occupancy, the property owner shall record a zoning commitment with the Monroe County Recorder in a form approved by the Planning and Transportation Department, committing to the following: beginning on a date that is 3 years after the date of the zoning commitment is recorded, if the ground floor dwelling unit, if any ground floor dwelling unit is removed or is vacant and not used for residential use for a continuous period of 12 months, the variance to allow that dwelling unit shall lapse and become null and void, and any subsequent use of that portion of the property shall comply with use standards and all other standards of the UDO. This condition shall act independently on each ground floor dwelling unit. There's a lot there. It's a recommendation. The following have to do with, if I could just summarize them, they say you're approving these proposed designs, these proposed facade designs. The first one says, it's these proposed facade designs, minor changes that are consistent with the intent of the submitted designs and that comply with the other conditions shall be considered comply with this condition, and the decision about whether it's compliant shall be made by the Planning and Transportation Department. That's just to allow them a little bit of, it's for you to be able to say as the board, we are approving these designs, but then allow them a little bit of leeway in case it turns out that exact color brick isn't available and they want to choose a slightly similar shade or something like that. So it's being clear about what you're approving, but giving them a reasonable amount of flexibility to actually implement it. Then 6, 7, 8, and 9 are separate for each of the facades and have to do with what exactly they're proposing for the projections and recesses. Essentially, the petitioner has put forward exactly the building designs that they think they're going to want to do, but they haven't yet done the work to commit to the exact unit mixes yet. So, some 3 bedrooms could become 2 bedrooms, vice versa, things like that. So because the facade modules are built up of different unit layouts, they want to be able to change those a little bit. So this is setting parameters for how much can change and still be okay, and you think meet the criteria for variance and are the minimum relief necessary, but giving them some flexibility so that they aren't stuck with, okay, we got to make this facade module exactly 30.5 feet. To summarize, number 6 regards the west facade of building 1 facing Fairview Street. It also consists of no fewer than 7 facade modules, each between 30 feet and 100 feet. Number 7, the east facade of building 3 facing Rogers Street shall consist of no fewer than 3 facade modules, offset by projections of at least 5 feet. and the length of those modules is a minimum of 20 feet, maximum of 100 feet. Number 8, the north facade of Building 3 facing the Beeline Trail shall consist of no fewer than 4 facade modules, each of those offset by recesses of at least 5 feet. Each shall be a minimum of 20 feet, maximum 100 feet. And 9, the south facade of Building 4 facing 9th Street shall consist of at least 5 facade modules between 20 and 40 feet. Right now, the proposed designs match these. These were written to accommodate the proposed designs, but it also gives them a little leeway to move them back and forth if that works out. Because staff thinks that that kind of leeway doesn't really change the overall intent or change any of the factors that weigh into the criteria. And so that's reasonable to have that flexibility. I hope that was clear enough, but fast enough. Thank you.
Gabriel, can we have the petitioner please come to the podium? And if you could sign in, I think there's a sign-up sheet there. And when you're ready, if you could just state your name, and then I will swear you in.
Hello, I'm Ryan Gallmeyer with Buckingham Companies, Buckingham Properties.
Do you swear to or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, you have up to 20 minutes to case. Thanks.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, BZA members, for considering our proposed project, and Jackie, Gabriel, for their in-depth review and presentation of our project, and thank you to concerned citizens of Bloomington that are present this evening. I'm Ryan Gallmeyer, as I mentioned. I also have Brett Davis, who's also with Buckingham, Bill Beggs, our attorney, and Jeff Fanio from our civil engineer. Again, we appreciate the opportunity to present our vision for a transformative project located at the Bloomington Iron and Metal Processing Site. Oh, perfect.
Sorry.
No problem. Just briefly, Buckingham Companies, we're based in Indianapolis. We've been in business for over 40 years. Our company was actually started, our president and founder was while he was a student at IU. I think one important distinction for Buckingham is that we are a long-term holder of our assets. We are not typically a merchant developer. The statistic is over 50% of our properties we've owned for over 15 years. And in fact, one of our projects, Bradford Ridge, located here, we've owned for over 30 years. What does Buckingham do? We're vertically integrated. That means we have everything we need under our roof to complete real estate development. I happen to be in the development group. We own our own construction firm. We have our own property management firm. There's a lot of symbiotic relationship, and we build for the long term. So any concerns or issues that are brought to our attention through our property management are incorporated in our latest developments. Some core aspects of our company include sustainability. We also have a separate 503c function, a Buckingham Foundation, that is devoted to LIHTC type projects. Just briefly, we've built a lot of great projects. We're proud of our projects. We also are pretty much art-centric. We incorporate public art into all our projects, and you would see that represented on several of the slides. The site. So 503 North Rogers, as you can quickly surmise, is not a rectangle. This site is uniquely shaped. It has some physical constraints that are unique to it that cannot be replicated on other sites. Starting kind of at the southwest corner near the Fairview 9th Street, a portion of our site is clipped out by the existing teacher's warehouse and the health clinic that's present there, so we don't have that hard corner. We're also directly adjacent to the Reverend Butler Park, obviously very low density or no density at that site. A little bit further up along Fairview, which is a pretty minor local street, is Bad Knees, a local t-shirt and soft goods provider. We're also bounded by the B line, which creates an unusual arc on our site. Very difficult to work around. Presents some opportunities, though, that we think we've implemented into our site plan to take the greatest advantage of the site. To the north, we're bounded by, well, not only the B line, but across the B line, the Scouts Honor dog boarding. Additionally, the B-Line Heights, which is a LIHTC housing. And then you'll notice, as Gabriel mentioned, our frontage along Rogers is limited to roughly 50 feet, and we'll describe why that's important, and Gabriel did to help with that regard, that it's very challenging to build in close proximity to Rogers. And then finally, there's Cook Animal Health, as well as the Carpenter Realtors. So this site has some other unusual features. If you've driven along Fairview, just before you get to 10th Street, you would see a large drainage swale. That water is draining to the east. We actually pick it up into a underground drainage system, all of which bisects this site. That is something that Jeff and his team are working with the city to evaluate opportunities to relocate. From a topographic standpoint, the site has significant site relief, starting roughly around the teacher's warehouse. The site drops 15 or so feet as you make it towards the middle of the site. So that's another unique constraint. Our frontage along 9th Street is also precluded by those two appendages of the existing facilities, creating a very narrow window to access the site. All of which, in our opinion, as seasoned developers, we believe would preclude the site from a truly commercial activity. It has very limited frontage on Rogers, which would be your primary access point. And we believe that this site could benefit from our proposed plan, which would provide some hierarchy in residential uses, where we begin from the Butler Park or from 9th Street, providing the lower density residential uses, and as we move to the north and east, do provide the commercial uses that are recommended in the UDO. We've also done our homework. Well, it doesn't matter. A few things. I mentioned through the survey, we've completed a complete survey of the site. We understand some of the encumbrances, of the unique encumbrances of the site. We've completed a geotech report. We understand the soil conditions, the rock formations at this site. And as may come up, we've also done a very in-depth environmental study of the site. As you may know, it did have some environmental impacts, which have been cleaned up, and we've gone through the process through our due diligence to determine that it is now a clean site. Just some photos of prominent locations along our perimeter. The top left shows you the limited space along Rogers between our south property line and the B line. The northeast, or the upper right corner, is the intersection of Jackson and 9th Street. So notice it's a residential street. It has a hard, sharp left turn at that location. The bottom left corner is at Fairview and the Beeline looking south. Again, a residential street with a residential user existing on the west side of that street. And then similarly at the bottom right corner, probably hard to depict, but it is you can see the grade of roughly 15 feet as you move up or towards the south. So a little bit about our site. Come on up. One of the things, just for, hopefully this is clarifying, so we discussed the ground floor units, and we believe the hierarchy of the uses as we move from the southwest towards the east is appropriate in this location, that adjacent to and south of 9th Street are single-family homes, so we're proposing townhomes at that location. And also adjacent to the park, we're also proposing residential units. However, along the perimeter, along the Beeline, Building 2 contains active uses that have a commercial look and feel that are amenities. And then as you move along Building 3 in an easterly direction, we have our leasing office, our proposed leasing office, fitness center, other active uses that would continue to have that commercial look and feel. In an appropriate amount in that blue portion, appropriate amount of retail. We're proposing 3,000 square feet, which we believe is achievable to lease, and partly based on just our users, our tenants, and for any of the pedestrian or bicycle traffic along the Beeline, and then to the extent the addition of the Showers Technology Center that'll be directly across the street. So why this site? Well, it's a site that we believe is in need of transformation. We believe we have the right use and we have the right mix of uses on our site. It would help facilitate and be complementary to the IU 2030 strategic plan, which would bring, is envisioned to have an additional $100+ million of microelectronics funding, $250 million of advanced scientific discoveries related to disease and human health, the proximity to the tech center, and we believe that this would help unite or integrate with the community of that area and provide a benefit and an opportunity to leverage those existing assets by providing the needed housing. Let me flip over here. There should be. Well. Well, when the slides come back, part of what we'd like to describe to you is the architecture that we've worked with the planning staff on to try to integrate into the UDO.
State your name, and I'll swear you in while they're getting that queued up.
I'm Brett Davis with Buckingham Companies.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. So architecturally, the first building that we have up is Building 1, which is adjacent to Fairview. This is our longest building facade. Gabriel was describing the length, right? We're achieving this length because of the affordability component and sustainability component. But the big thing that we're trying to do here is within the 7 modules that we're proposing is to really try to bring down the scale of this building. So within those modules, we're trying to use traditional architecture, traditional materials, and break up this long facade and play with the colors and the materiality of the facade to break up the facade along Fairview, which is the top elevation. Ryan was describing the grade, over 15 feet of grade change along Fairview. So you can kind of see on the right side of the screen, the roughly the 15 feet that kind of comes up and almost starts to bury kind of the first unit there, the first level of units. As you come to the second elevation, the east elevation of Building 1, this is kind of the V shape, kind of making up the park-like setting on the interior of the buildings. You can see again that we're playing with the facade materiality. Moving along to Building 2, kind of an interior building to the site. What I really want to point out here, again, we're mixing up the materials, trying to pull down the facade to kind of bring down the scale of the building. But you can start to see we have in the lower bottom corner to the right, you can see the amenity space that is engaging the beeline with storefront materials kind of starting to engage the beeline. Go to the next slide. So the top elevation is what you would see along Rogers. So this is our retail space. On the far right side would be the amenity space. So you can see the terrace starting to kind of show itself, the patio space. As you go down to the north elevation, again, this is our amenity space activated with storefront. See the terrace kind of engaging the beeline. So we're 4 stories over one level of retail. And then the last elevation would be the south elevation, which is along 9th Street. And you can see that we're stepping down the architecture to kind of respect the residential area directly to the south. As we go flip forward here, you can really start to see the kind of the facade articulation and how we're trying to break down the length of this building. So not only do we have the facade articulations, you see the balconies, you see the bay windows starting to kind of start playing with the scale. You can also see, again, kind of the grade changing there in the foreground. If we go to the next slide. So this is, again, Building 1, now looking to the south. You can see the stoops kind of engaging Fairview, kind of respecting the park space and the existing kind of residential kind of stepping down in height versus the taller podium space on the east side of the site. Then moving forward. This is an interior view directly kind of adjacent to the multi-use path, the public multi-use path there to the south. You can see that the pickleball courts kind of activating the foreground. Stoops, again, kind of activating kind of that first level residential space. Flipping forward. Again, this is the corner of Rogers and the beeline. You can see the outdoor gathering space on the first floor. See us like how we would envision the engagement of the beeline trail. And again, this is the elevations of the 9th Street, the townhomes, directly adjacent to the residential.
So with that, we'll turn it back over to staff.
Anybody like to start? Flavia?
I have a question for Gabriel. So you say that in this district, there are no ground floor units? Can you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, so in the UDO, for some of the uses, there are use-specific standards, and for some of those, it depends on the district. So the use here is multifamily dwelling, and multifamily dwelling has use-specific standards. Those standards include that in the MDST district, ground floor dwelling units are not permitted. Whereas other districts, there's different use-specific standards. including in other character areas within downtown, including downtown edges. Ground floor dwelling units are allowed, but not within the first 20 feet of a building facing a street. And this proposal is meeting that condition, even though that's not the standard, the UDO standard that applies here. They are meeting that condition facing Rogers and the B line for building 2. So they're paying attention to what the UDO is trying to achieve with some of these use-specific standards and achieving as much of it as they can. But the result is in this character area of downtown, which is the UDO calls it the Showers Technology Character Area. It coincides with the Trades District Certified Technology Park. In that area, ground floor residential units are not allowed per the use-specific standards for multifamily dwelling.
Other questions? Tim?
I'm good.
Okay. I have a question for Gabriel. Could you explain how the affordable housing and the sustainability incentives work?
Are you more interested in why they're required, or more interested in what they have to do to achieve them?
I want to understand so if they were not utilizing them, they could only build buildings that have 10,000 square feet, correct?
That's correct.
Right, so both of these incentives allow for an additional 10,000 square feet per building footprint, is that correct?
So without any incentives, oh, yes. So, well, let's see, does it work that way? I think that's correct. The result is, without any incentives, max 10,000 square feet. With both incentives, max 30,000 square feet.
And then what level of affordability is provided with these incentives?
So the minimum necessary to achieve the incentives is, let's see. Let me back up for a minute. To achieve the affordable housing incentive, the UDO allows providing dwelling units, affordable dwelling units on site, or a payment in lieu to the city's housing development fund. And the amount of that, the minimum amount of that payment is based on the number of units that would have to be provided on site. So first of all, there's two options there. And the UDO, current version of the UDO treats those options the same. They both get you the same incentives. And if it's the payment in lieu, it's based on the number of units that would have to be provided, but it ends up being a sum of money to the housing fund, which then the city would use to fund and promote affordable housing at whatever income level the city thinks is most necessary and most effective. If it's provided on site, the minimum amount would be at least, so because they're proposing 225 dwelling units, at least 15%, so 34 would have to be permanently, 34 dwelling units would have to be permanently income restricted to be affordable to households earning below 120% of the area median income. That's the minimum. If they chose to make it affordable at to people making less, that would also be compliant.
Okay. Okay, and is it within our purview to condition any of these variances related to affordable housing? Because it strikes me that this is by allowing ground floor residential units, that's over 40 units, that's another 20% more density, quite significant. I'm just wondering if there's any purview that we would have in providing either a higher level of affordability or a deeper level of affordability, changing that percentage. That's since there's an option, we would have to look at it both ways. I don't know if if the owners,
yeah.
yeah.
Can I send that to Colleen, or no? Well, let me answer, start with, the part of that question gets to how far does the authority of the BZA extend? And some of that, I would hope that maybe legal could provide more guidance on, but what I can say for sure is that anything in your decision, including the conditions, must be based in your findings. So there has to be something in your findings that tie the need for the affordable housing to the variance request, right? Are you able to add anything?
I hear your question, so you're going to have to repeat that for me, please.
My question is, the BZA purview, the first variance, the result is a substantial number of additional units, the ground floor units, almost 20% more for the project. And I'm just wondering how that affects the affordability. Obviously, it's a percentage, so there's a larger number of units that are now have to be considered, but I wanted to know if the BZA has any purview to add any further conditions about that stipulate either deeper affordability, change the number, the percentage of, rather than the 15%, say 20%. I just want to know if we have any purview to do that, since the housing is the critical issue with the main variance.
The conditions that you guys have on your variances that you have to make reasonable conditions.
Could you speak into the mic a little bit more?
Sorry, your conditions have to be reasonable, so if the percentages are based in the UDO, I believe that you could make a variance to that. It would just have to be tied to everything, and like Gabriel said, in your findings. However, if the percentages are not as part of the UDO, and I will have to leave that to Gabriel to answer, I do not know that, I would say that is outside of your purview.
Can I ask you a clarifying question? Sure. Saying in the UDO, so the UDO, for everyone here tonight, the affordability incentives, there are 2 tiers established in the UDO. Everything that we've talked about so far is based on, I forget how they're numbered, whether it's tier 1 or tier 2, but anyway, the one that is allows affordability to higher incomes. So there's another one that includes restrictions to even lower incomes. It's still 15%, but instead of 15% at 120% of area median income, it's 7.5% at 90, and then another 7.5% at 120. So the way the conditions are written right now, and even without this conditions based just on site plan approval, this project will have to achieve the first tier. So in other words, affordability 120% of area median income. But there is the other tier that is specified in the UDO that would have at least 7.5% at 90% of AMI, so be affordable to people with lower incomes. That would not automatically be a requirement for this project in the way that the first tier would, but because that's spelled out in the UDO, if that can be tied to specific findings, would referencing that tier be at least within the bounds of what the board can consider?
A little bit closer. Full disclosure, I do not normally cover the planning, so give me a moment. Thank you.
Typically, that second tier?
What triggers?
I mean, what does that allow you? Do you get more square footage if you go to that second tier? I'm just curious.
I'm trying to remember.
Okay.
I believe the building floor plate is the same, whichever tier you get, but based on tier, the height's a little different. This one here, they're not using up to the full amount of, they're not proposing to use up to the full amount of height that they could get, so they don't need the extra tier. There may be some other incentives that don't come into play that would require the tier 1. But if you really want an answer, I can look it up and get back to you.
That's okay. Maybe if you could look it up while we do public comment. Okay, anybody, any other questions at this time? Okay, seeing none, we will go to the public for comment. Is there anyone here or online who would like to comment on this petition? This is your opportunity. If so, please step to the lectern and I will swear you in. If you could sign in, please. Could you state your name?
Hello, yes. My name is Joseph Bradley Davis.
And do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, you've up to 5 minutes to speak.
All right, thank you. I just want to say that it looks to be a very interesting project. I've had a long history of utilizing the services of Fells and Bloomington Iron and Metal over the years, and have always loved this site right here in the heart of downtown. One thing that I liked hearing about was the fact that Buckingham Properties is a real proponent of including public art in all of their projects, and currently on site or in situ is some existing limestone facade and derrick sort of left over that helps support that structure. And it's right along that beeline edge toward the east side of the property. It's very interesting as an architectural remnant from the past that speaks to the former use of the site. And I think it would be awesome if that could be kept in place. Maybe some of the design of where the buildings are right there around, this would be the easternmost buildings that are sort of on the edge, that are going to be the storefronts or the businesses that are proposed right there. I think it would be really nice to be able to accommodate that existing limestone facade that stands there very solidly, and try to incorporate that into the design, and that could be the public art for the project. And as well, it is limestone. Maybe perhaps there should be more facade elements of limestone, especially if that were to take place, where that would be left in place or worked around. I do think that it's a very interesting site due to its constraints with the beeline as a border along the sort of the northern edge, and certainly it nestles into the neighborhood that exist along Fairview and also to 9th Street there. So certainly it presents some challenges, but it would be awesome if that existing limestone could be incorporated into the design, just to make a nod to the past and keep us all, I guess, aware of the long history that has been a part of Bloomington. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anybody else here this evening who'd like to comment? Is there anybody online?
Sorry, if you're on Zoom, if you want to raise your virtual hand or send a message to the host, we can let you comment, but I don't see anything so far. It's just a second.
Okay. There's somebody? Nobody. Okay. Okay, so seeing no further comment, we are back to the petitioner. Do they have some time remaining?
4 minutes and 23 seconds.
Okay. Please sign in. Hi, could you please state your name?
Bill Beggs, Bugner and Robertson, here in Bloomington.
Great. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you.
With respect to the conditions, I want to address that first. Page 12 of the packet, there are 9 conditions. As soon as we got these, we got in touch with staff, and the 2 I'd like to call your attention to are 4 and 9, numbers 4 and 9. Our request with regard to 4 is driven by a lender problem or concern with the way it's drafted. We asked the staff if it would be willing to support striking that in its entirety. I think the staff's preference is to not do so, and okay, we understand that. Our request, however, that I do suspect is acceptable to staff is 5 lines down, you will see the words "or is vacant," or is vacant, and that creates significant problems from our lender's perspective and from auditing through the lenders. And so our request with regard to condition number 4 is that the word, first off, it would be that 4 be stricken entirely, but we understand the board may be inclined to agree with the staff on that. However, I think non-controversial compromise would be that the words "or is vacant" be stricken from number 4. Second one is with regard to condition number 9, the number of facade modules is fixed at 5. We can't say for certain the number of townhomes that would be built on that south out on the 9th Street side of the project. It might be 4, it might be fewer than this. And so our request would be that the number of facade modules either match the number of townhomes, or that we simply have the opportunity to address that with staff at a staff level revision to the condition based upon the ultimate site plan that's submitted and approved, which may be exactly 5 and it may be 4, and it might be, so we just don't want to be locked into that if it isn't supported by the design. Finally, you didn't ask me, but just with regard to the possibility of changing the condition number 1, which would be the 15%, and that won't work for this site. It won't work for this project, and so from that perspective, Buckingham wants to comply with the ordinance and comply with what we've come in understanding to be the staff's recommended approval under the language of the ordinance, but a change to that is not something that we are going to be able to live with. So I don't know if the board is interested in the petitioner's feelings on that or not. I appreciate the question, but that's where we would stand on that. So, and staff might have a little more to add on that as well, but we would request that the ordinance be followed with regard to the 15% at the 120. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we are back to the board for further questions or motion or discussion. Any thoughts? Anybody wants to share?
Question for staff on number 4. Is there any problems removing the word vacant or is vacant? from this paragraph?
I guess staff would want to know, staff drafted these words that are currently here, but staff would want to know what the significance of removing vacant would be. If the if the revision, if changing condition 4 keeps the idea that essentially when there's ceased to be used for residential use, the variance becomes null, staff would be fine with wording changes that are work for their lender that also achieve that. If the wording changes would significantly change it so that so that they could be kept in a state where they're not trying to use them, and they're not not providing housing, then staff would be uncomfortable with that.
Appreciate that, and I thought we'd explained. So, with regard to that phrase, well, let's back up. The building will have residential units in that location. They're going to be built out as residential units. If it would happen that there would be a lender audit at a time when one of those units is vacant, and we had a potential violation of a condition, and that wouldn't be intentionally vacant, it would just be by the happenstance of when somebody has moved in or moved out, that we would find ourselves potentially in violation of our lending agreement. And so this is not in any way, shape, or form intended to interfere with the goal that Gabriel explained to you in his original presentation. It's simply meant to make sure that we don't get tripped up when there happens to be a vacancy in a residential unit. We think these are going to be the most desirable of the units anyway, so we don't anticipate this, but we can't, our crystal balls are not that good, and we can't be certain. So we're trying to guard against some situation where there's a lender audit, they find a vacant unit, they think we've now run afoul of what the BZA intended, when you've heard the goal tonight, and we'd be satisfying the goal anyway. So that's what that is. I really think this is not a
The condition though state for 12 continuous months. I mean, I think that's a pretty clearly stated. So
And
an absence of a month or two wouldn't be a violation, and it should be easily determined by a lender.
And we don't think that's going to be a problem, but we just don't want to find ourselves having to explain that to somebody who wasn't here tonight when we explained we are not contesting or opposing the staff's desire. We simply don't want to have a number of years down the road when nobody remembers what was discussed this evening and the goal behind that requirement to have to defend that down the road. So that's the point of that. I mean, I don't think or is vacant is going to change anything about what staff is trying to accomplish with regard to what Gabriel explained earlier.
So Gabriel, could you just I'm trying to understand the reason for this. It's only 3 years you're talking about. You're just concerned that they're not going to lease them up, or?
So the condition as proposed is that it would start after 3 years.
Start after 3 years.
And then run forever.
Beginning on the date that is 3 years after the date of the zoning commitment.
That 3 years, that's based, that number happens to be the length of time you get to hold on to a variance without completing your project. So if they get these variances tonight, if you grant the variances tonight, and then they just forget about it and said, we're not doing this project anyway, the variance would technically hang out there for 3 years, and then after they didn't do anything on it, it would expire. That's just part of the UDO. So that's a different thing, but that's saying the UDO kind of expects that projects can maybe take about 3 years to like go from this point to actually getting built. So sort of taking that idea of like, well, 3 years is a time to sort of build up stuff. Admittedly, that 3 years is, I don't want to say arbitrary because we're trying to base it on something, but it could be a different number of years. But the purpose of having it start a little later was just to not hold them to it at the beginning. Like maybe it'll be hard to rent out at the very beginning. We don't want to create that kind of problems. We're not concerned about the first few years. We're concerned about 10 years, 15, 20 years in the future is really what this is about. So that's where the 3 years comes from. To answer what I think your question was really getting to is, as drafted, this condition would, once it starts, in effect, would carry on forever.
In perpetuity.
Yes.
Okay. And was there any consideration given of just rezoning the property?
That's a great question. You may want to pose that question to the petitioners as well, but from staff's point of view, there's different ways of looking at it. One of the ways that I would like to invite you to look at it is rezoning even though it might have the same effect of allowing this, and in fact, some of the things where they're following standards from a different zone, and we're trying to use a variance to be able to do that, why not just rezone it? Rezoning is in effect saying the city's plan for the future development of this area is changing. We no longer want this to be part of the showers technology area. We no longer want this to be really focused on the innovation and job creation kind of engine for Bloomington. We want this just to be housing. And staff does not recommend, would not, I guess it wouldn't be the BZA who would be doing the rezoning, but staff wouldn't be supportive of really changing what the overall policy and future goals for this area is. It's part of the technology, the certified technology park. It should still be there to support that mission. So rezone, even though the effect would be the same, the reasoning behind it would be very different. And staff would not be supportive of giving up on this parcel and carving it out of the technology park and saying, never mind, this is more like a different part of downtown. Staff believes that there's a reason that this area was chosen and this area was included within the technology park. And then with that, staff's opinion, recommendation, analysis is that given the conditions of the site and the conditions of the market for different types of land use in Bloomington today, this proposal supports that goal of this district as a hub for technology and innovation. Even though it's not providing a lot of uses for that, but these are people who can live here, increase the chance of people who could live there and work right there, creates more of sort of that feedback of talent and talent living there and jobs for them to do. So yes, this could be a rezone and achieve the same effect, but it has a very different meaning for what the future of this area of Bloomington is.
Could you explain, in response to the stipulation number 9, why you settled on 5?
That was looking at the proposed plan and counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and saying, okay, 5 sounds good. So changing that to no fewer than 3, changing that to just striking that part to say the facade facing 9th Street shall consist of facade modules offset by at least 5 feet, and that each of the facade modules, without numbering them, shall be in a length between a minimum of 20 and a maximum of 40. So it's approximately 120 feet wide. If you divided it up into 40, you'd get 3 So maybe just striking the number altogether would be fine.
Any other questions?
Want to go back to that affordable housing. So these units that are going to be built, will they or will they not possess affordable housing? Or are you donating? You're in the middle of that conversation.
We haven't asked them, and they have
Oh.
not. They did not.
Well, that'll
it
be
was
to the
not in-
petitioner then.
Yeah.
Is that a commitment that they're making, or is it going to be a contribution to the fund? I'm just curious. The reason I ask is because of the location.
Yeah, as of tonight, that decision isn't final, so I don't have a final answer for you. That's under consideration. Certainly, we know it's out there.
Would go about deciding that in the future. I'm just curious how you'll make that decision in the future. What would compel you to make it affordable, to provide affordable housing?
You want to talk to that?
Curious because we are at the beginning of this process with you.
Sure. And, thank you for the question. I think there's also another bite at the apple in this particular issue, too, as we proceed, and if we were to be granted these variances, as we proceed into the site plan approval process, at which point we could address and have an opportunity to, the board at that time would have an opportunity to potentially require or make that decision occur.
I'm sorry, I'm getting a lot of chatter over here out in front of me, and it's distracting to me. So could you please repeat that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I would, great.
I got you. You go into the actual site planning?
Correct. As we go if we were to be granted these variances, we would enter into the next stage of approval, which is the site plan approval, which would be another public approval process, at which point, if that stipulation, there was a desire for one or the other, we could make that decision at that time and enact the stipulation.
Gabriel, were you able to find out what that level 2, when does that kick in, or when do people use that?
In most districts in the city, the only difference between tier 1 and tier 2 has to do with height, how many extra stories you get. And they're, even with just tier 1, they're already getting allowance for more stories than they're proposing, so that doesn't apply to them. What may be interesting or extra knowledge for you is in the Transform Redevelopment Overlay, the TRO, which is placed on the Hopewell site, the former IU hospital, there are different floor plate maximums depending on the tiers. So that the tiers do matter more in that particular overlay, but we're not in that overlay. So here, going from tier 1 to tier 2 would only get them an extra story, which they don't plan on using anyway.
Mm-hmm. And in other districts, I think you stated it, you spoke to it a bit, but one of the reasons that we don't allow ground floor, first floor units is primarily because of privacy issues and adjacencies to streets and that sort of thing, and wanting a more active streetscape and interaction with the pedestrian environments.
That's exactly right. Just to add that the downtown districts all have at least the 20-foot back requirement, so ground floor units are not facing public streets. It's in the highest density residential, mixed-use student housing that are meant to be residential but are outside of downtown, where it's okay to have residential units right up to the street. So as you'll remember, the building facades along the B line and along Rogers do not have dwelling units facing B line or Rogers. Well, building 1 may have a dwelling unit adjacent to the corner of the B line there. But along Fairview and 9th are where there are ground floor dwelling units facing the street.
Okay, thanks. Okay, any other? No? Tim, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. No, I mean, how would we go about making the changes about taking out the vacancy then? The line in number 4, would we make a motion to amend that?
I actually would, I don't know, I would suggest maybe to strike it altogether. I don't know if people. 4.
I was going to say that you could strike number 9 because the city's said yeah to that. I just don't think there's any need to change 4 just because of the 12-month requirement, you know? I mean,
yeah.
I don't care one way or the other, but it seems like it's pretty well worded.
Well, I'm familiar with dealing with lenders, and wording is very important.
So, I mean, that 12 months, you don't think that that does it?
It's very important.
It's very important, but do you feel,
I guess what I'm asking is the clarity of the language there enough with the 12 months, or they're not talking about a 1 or 2 month vacancy?
Yeah.
What I'm asking is in that stipulation, as it's worded, it sounds like it's just saying that they're trying to prevent an extended vacancy of a year or longer, which I think is a reasonable request. You know, you would know better from a realty side, but I mean, I understand what the city's asking for there. So I was just saying, I don't think it should be a difficulty, but if it's going to be, then.
I just sort of feel like if we're going to grant the variance and it can be residential, then I think it just can be residential. And just be residential. I mean, either it's okay
Yeah.
and
So then.
this is appropriate in this location.
Right. So then to Tim's point, we would just, you would make a motion then without 4 or 9 included. You don't have to make the motion with all 9 of the city's recommendations, correct?
Right.
One last question for staff. So on the side on Fairview, do we have, is the first floor ground units 20 feet away from the
The
road?
standard that applies to the downtown districts where ground floor dwelling, to the mixed-use downtown districts where ground floor dwelling units are allowed, is that in the first 20 feet behind the building wall, you can't have dwelling units. So these dwelling
Yes.
units are at the they're right behind the building wall, so they don't comply with that standard. If you're asking how far away they are from the street, it depends on what you mean by street, because there's the sidewalk and the roadway, and et cetera.
That's exactly what I want to ask. I just misspoke.
So the provision that you're used to with 20 feet behind the front building wall isn't in this overlay because dwelling units aren't allowed at all. So it doesn't apply. So if you allow the use of the dwelling units, then they can be right up to the front wall. Right.
Okay.
And second thing I was going to say is, yes, just to clarify what Mr. Throckmorton said, if you wanted to make a motion that was basically the city's motion minus conditions, whichever ones you want, that would be perfectly fine. You don't have to reword it.
Which is what it sounds like. Is that what you were saying, Barry, is just drop it?
Yeah, I think so.
If I might add something about conditions, the conditions have to be reasonable based on the findings. So some of the findings talk about the time aspect of allowing residential units, for a time. So if you were to consider removing condition 4, I would encourage you to look at the proposed findings and maybe remove or alter some of the findings that talk about time limits.
So does that relate to, that would be variance 1?
In particular, I was looking at page 6 of the packet, the proposed finding for variance 1. There's a big paragraph that begins for variance, the proposed finding for criteria 1, there's a big paragraph that starts for variance 1, ground floor dwelling units, da 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 da. There's one sentence that says, with conditions that set reasonable time limits on the future continuation of ground floor dwelling units on this property, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, to the end of that sentence. If you felt that condition 4 was not necessary, you might consider taking out that sentence.
On page 6?
Yeah.
But that is.
Sorry if I'm getting to real
No, but
inside
isn't,
sports
I
here,
think
but-
that's more an explanation. I think the criterions and findings start on 9, though.
The conditions start on 9, but the proposed findings start on page 6. I'm sorry, I'm looking at different page numbers.
Oh, okay.
I'm
Okay.
wrong. You are right.
Okay.
Yes.
Just use the 20.06, whatever, to cross-reference it.
Right. So proposed finding, page 9, there's a sentence in there about timeframe?
Yeah, so the sentence reads, with conditions that set reasonable time limits on the future continuation of ground floor dwelling units on this property, approval of the requested variance to allow ground floor dwelling units at this time will not foreclose or significantly restrict the future development of the trades district or the rest of the certified technology park as a hub for innovation and technology. So you might consider removing or revising that sentence.
Okay. Do you guys all see that? Yes. Okay.
Set reasonable time limits.
In that sentence that Mr. Holbrow just read, the preamble part, the portion before you could just take that out because the rest of the sentence makes sense on its own, that allowing the. With the conditions part? Yes. That might be simpler.
Yeah. So just that, the clause, if we want to do that.
When making the motion, though, if we're going to use the proposal from the city as a basis, do we need to go back in on the motion and include that?
Yeah, we need to strike that language.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I will entertain a motion.
Yeah, and then, just one thing that strikes me is that because of the oddity, I just want to say because of the oddity of the structure of that property, it seems a little different than what we're talking about with a lot of street facing.
Yeah, no,
And
it's
so that's
more
why I think
internal.
that this seems to be a very reasonable request overall. And I think that seems to be the general consensus, yeah.
I think
Okay.
so.
Well, it's a unique site
Yeah,
with a unique fronts. One front is the
yeah, the Beeline Trail, yeah,
the Beeline Trail, the other one is a park.
yeah. And 50 feet on a street
Yes.
is limited on the.
Very limited.
On Rogers. Maybe it would be better coming from, do you want to take a shot at the motion? Can you make it with that stipulation in it, or you want someone else to?
Oh, me?
Yeah, because I think we're in concurrence with
Okay.
with where it's going, just it
Okay.
may speed things up. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. I move approval of V-32-23 with the findings, the criterion findings for the development standards as stated in the packet, with the exception of, however, striking the clause under variance 1, proposed criteria 1, the finding, the second paragraph, the clause with conditions that set reasonable time limits on the future continuation of ground floor dwelling units on this property, and with the conditions of approval as stated with conditions of approval, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay. That makes sense? Okay. Any discussion? Tim, you would?
I'm good.
Okay, then we're ready for a vote, please. Yes.
Ballard.
Yes.
Burrell.
Okay. The variances are granted. Good luck. And Gabriel, thank you so much for all your hard work on this. Okay. Have a good evening. We are on to, do you want to take a break? Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break. So that we'll be back, let's say by 7:15, 7 minutes. And we are ready for a staff report. The next case is CU/V-33-23, Spiridon Strategos. Okay, staff report, please.
Again, I'm Gabriel Holbrow, zoning planner for City of Bloomington, here to present the staff report for CU/V -33-23. This is for 329 South Maple Street, located in the Prospect Hill neighborhood. Whoops. Oh. What happened here? Pardon me while I figure out there are technical difficulties here. I'm going to have to apologize and say that the slides that I made have disappeared. So we're going to do this by what's in the packet. This is 329 South Maple Street. It's located in the Prospect Hill neighborhood, also in the Prospect Hill Local Historic District. The property is approximately 5,925 square feet. It's in the residential small lot zoning district R3. The comprehensive plan designation is mixed urban residential. The existing use is a duplex, and the proposed use is a duplex. There are two requests that are part of this petition. The first is for a conditional use approval for an expansion of the duplex. So it's been a duplex for, a duplex, of course, being 2 dwelling units under 1 roof. It's been a duplex for at least since back before duplexes were disallowed in these districts, so a number of decades. So it's allowed, as it is now, as a lawful non-conforming use, allowed to continue. Because the petitioner is proposing to expand it by adding an addition on the back, which will increase the size of the kitchen and add a bedroom, it needs conditional use approval for the addition and for the duplex as a whole. So that's why we're coming here. They're also requesting a variance from their rear yard setback. The minimum rear yard setback is 25 feet from the rear property line. They are proposing a rear setback of 12 feet, 3.5 inches. proposed, so the criteria for a conditional use permit, first there's the general compliance criteria that apply to all to site plans and conditional use, but compliance with the UDO, compliance with other applicable regulations, compliance with the utility service and improvement standards, and compliance with prior approvals. The proposed finding is that this complies with all with the UDO, including the use-specific standards for the duplex use. This includes that the property owner does not have any notices of violation on file. Each unit has its own separate exterior entrance. The design of the building incorporates elements similar to surrounding residences, including a pitched roof, covered porches, vehicle access from the rear. The structure will contain 3 bedrooms, which is less than the maximum allowed. Each unit will have its own separate utility meters. 1 off-street parking space is provided in the northeast corner of the site, as there is a requirement for at least 1 off-street parking space. The petitioner attended a meeting of the Prospect Hill Neighborhood Association and presented the petition as required. And the petition is compliant with Certificate of Appropriateness COA 23-52 issued by the Historic Preservation Commission because this is in a local historic district. There are additional criteria that apply to all conditional uses, including for duplexes. This includes consistency with a comprehensive plan and other applicable plans. Staff's proposed finding is that the proposal is in line with the goals of the comprehensive plan, which include that this area redevelopment should be compatible with surroundings, and that the most appropriate development activity is the rehabilitation of older structures for residential uses, which is exactly what this is. The proposal seeks to allow the continuation of the structure as a residential use and allows access to nearby downtown amenities for more people. There's also the criteria for conditional uses that it provides adequate public services and facilities. Proposed finding is that the site has existing utility connection and no issues have been identified with other public services or facilities. There's the criterion that it minimizes or mitigates adverse impacts. The proposed finding is that there are no natural or scenic features that will be impacted. The building is located within a historic district but received a certificate of appropriateness. No significant adverse impacts are expected from the expansion of the existing duplex. No changes to trash and waste collection are expected, and the petitioner has offered multiple occasions to meet with interested parties to discuss and address any concerns of the project. There's also a criterion that there be a rational phasing plan. No phasing is proposed. So then going to the criterion for the variances, essentially staff is supporting granting the variance. Proposed finding is that there's no injury to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. The proposed rear setback, while not compliant with strict application of the UDO, is not unusual for the surrounding historic neighborhoods. Number 2, for the second criterion for the variance, the proposed finding is that no adverse effect to the use and value of adjacent properties is found. The presence of the rear alley provides at least 25 feet of separation from the rear of the addition to the nearest property line, so the use and value of adjacent areas will not be adversely affected. And finally, for the third criterion, practical difficulty is found in 2 things. The relatively shallow depth of 100 feet for the property, when many properties in this area are, in the older neighborhoods, are 132 feet. Also, the existing certificate of appropriateness, based on the historic character around it, is for a 1-story building, which is the primary character in this pocket of the neighborhood. And so the UDO would allow a 2nd story. So the UDO is saying that that amount of living space is appropriate, but then because of the historic context, as enforced through the certificate of appropriateness, there's reasons why a 2nd story is not an available option. So that it's restricting the living area below what the UDO already said is okay. So strict application of the UDO is causing a practical hardship that that the variance can relieve by allowing the setback, the rear setback to be less than otherwise required. So based on the proposed findings, the department recommends approval of CU/V-33-23 with one condition. The conditional use and variance approval is limited to the design shown and discussed in the packet. Thank you.
Thank you. Petitioner, representative, if you'd like to step to the lectern, sign in, please. If you could state your name.
I am Dennis Birch from MCA Mark Cornet Architects.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, you have up to 20 minutes to state the case.
First off, I want to thank you for hearing our proposal and design tonight. I want to thank Gabriel and the planning staff for all their help and assistance. Just very briefly, I think Gabriel explained it. What we're doing basically is remodeling and adding on to an existing duplex that is roughly 100 years old in the Prospect Hills neighborhood. And the intent is for the addition portion of this is to be occupied by the owner, and the adjoining side, which is basically an efficiency unit-sized apartment to be used by family members and or guests primarily. The renovation component basically involves a complete renovation of the exterior and interior of the building with replacement of exterior doors and windows, exterior siding, trim, roofing, gutters, downspouts, everything. And the other new component construction of this is there will be a new covered front entry porch that faces the Maple Street side of the house. So beyond that, we do feel, as Gabriel discussed from the standpoint of the general project design, it's well suited for the neighborhood from the standpoint of the character and the proportions and size and massing of the project. And basically, we think it's appropriate. It has been reviewed, obviously, by the Historic Preservation Commission. They have approved it. The Prospect Hills Neighborhood Association has approved it also, and it has planning staff approval and recommendation also. So our request is that you would obviously look on it favorably also. So if you have any questions or anything, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have just a brief statement.
Could you state your
Chris
name?
Sturbaum.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, please proceed.
Yeah, the owner had a death in the family and wanted to come, but he had to leave, and he asked me to come, and so I'm here bringing his apologies for not showing up. But his son's been living in this place for a long time, and he has an idea of moving into town as he ages. Mm-hmm. He goes by Strats because Spiridon Strategos is a mouthful. And I have some drawings that, since we didn't get some of these drawings, I'd like to hand to you. And I think those will make it a little clearer. And we are removing the old asbestos siding with the little wavy bottom, and we're putting a traditional porch on that was most likely like the porch that was on that, in that neighborhood. And we're going to trim it traditionally and use 4-inch lap siding, and it's going to be beautiful. And really, in the end, we're adding 1 bedroom. We're taking down some of it, putting back some of it, and having 1 extra bedroom. So there are 2 bedrooms on one side, 1 bedroom on the other. And that's all I got. Any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
We are to the board for any questions. Does anybody have any questions? No? Okay. Flavia?
No.
Tim?
No,
No
I'm
questions. Okay. Then we are to the public for any comment. Oops.
Jackie Scanlon, Development Services Manager. We have a member of the public who's been trying to get into the Zoom, and we had sent her some detailed directions. She's having a hard time with her landline. So I have her here and verified with legal. I'm just going to put her on speaker, and we'll treat her like she was on Zoom. Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Carol?
Yes.
Okay, hold on.
This is a
Can you
first.
hear us, Carol?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, can you all hear her?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead,
Okay.
Barry.
Carol, could you please state your full name?
Carol, you need to turn your TV down, and then,
right.
and then you're fine. Then can you please state your full name?
Yes. My name is Carol Eunice Thompson.
Carol, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. Thank you. You have up to 5 minutes to speak.
And yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead. You have your 5 minutes, Carol.
All right. Hello, my name is Carol Eunice Thompson. I own the property at 322 South Fairview Street, and I live at the residence. The house at 322 South Fairview Street has been owned and lived in by 1 or more members of my family nonstop for more than 70 years. I'm calling to say very respectfully that I'm not opposed to the expansion of the house at 329 South Maple Street if the parking area behind the house remains unchanged in size and only 1 vehicle is allowed to park in that space, both now and in the future. Also, I'm happy that the house, which has been a 2-apartment rental duplex for some time, is now going to become the home of the current owner of the property, Mr. Strategos. As all of you probably know, public alleys run both behind and beside my property at 322 South Fairview Street and the house at 329 South Maple Street. These alleys are very narrow alleys. I don't know the exact year these alleys were created in the Prospect Hill neighborhood, but I'm quite sure they were created well over 100 years ago. I believe the people who created these alleys never dreamed how many vehicles would be driving on them by the year 2023, and I don't think these very narrow alleys were ever meant to be high-traffic areas. As a longtime resident of Prospect Hill, I can tell you that the number of cars and trucks that drive behind my house and past the side of my house on these narrow alleys has increased significantly since my childhood. Many of the vehicles that drive north or south behind my house or east or west beside my house are driven by people I don't know, and some of these drivers drive fast down these alleys as if the alleys are streets instead of narrow alleys. This is of special concern to me because when drivers drive east or west on the narrow alley that runs past the side of my house, there's a point where their vehicles drive past my kitchen and enclosed front porch, and their vehicles are not feet away from the side of my house, but are only inches away from the side of my house. Again, very respectfully, if you approve the petition of Mr. Strategos to build the rear addition. It is my hope that it will be with the condition that only one vehicle will continue to be allowed to park in the space behind his house at 329 South Maple Street, both now and in the future. This would help to prevent parked cars or trucks from blocking visibility or the right-of-way for people driving north, south, east, or west in the narrow alleys. And it would also help to keep the number of vehicles driving on the narrow alleys from significantly increasing in number. Also, I believe it would help to lessen possible stress I or my neighbors might experience if the house at 329 South Maple Street someday converts back to being a 2-apartment rental duplex. If it does convert back to being a duplex in the future, sometime after the rear addition and renovations to the property have been made, that will mean, of course, that up to 3 unrelated adults could possibly live in each of the 2 apartments, and could mean that up to 6 cars might need to park at or near the duplex. Thank you very much for considering my opinion and concerns, which again, I'm submitting very respectfully to each one of you and all others. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thanks, Carol.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public on Zoom? No one else. Okay. So then we are back to the petitioner for any final comments. Okay. We are then back to the board for action.
I want to address the question of parking in the back of the house. Is there any parking in the back of the house?
So there is the
A
12th
pad, yeah.
pad, but just to, can you pull it up?
Presentation
Okay.
now.
I will just say while you're working on that it's only 12, like just 12 feet wide.
Yeah.
So it only really provides space for one car. So that concern is addressed by the minimal size of or the minimal width of the parking area. You really physically can't park more than one car.
This is an aerial imagery from last year, 2022 in the spring sometime. You can see a car back there. That's an existing off-street parking space, so this is a photo from last year. The proposed parking area is essentially the same location, same dimensions. Tried to give some transparency so you could see both the plan and the building underneath it. So the black area is the addition, and the parking area is proposed for the same area. It'll be 12 feet wide in one direction and I believe 18 feet long in the other. That is a requirement for one parking space, which they are fulfilling. The UDO, there's nothing directly in the UDO that says you couldn't squeeze 2 cars in there, but as a matter of physics and how big cars are, I don't see how it would be possible to fit 2 cars in there without encroaching in the alley, which would subject a car to getting a ticket. So it is one parking space for one vehicle.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay, I will entertain a motion.
Go ahead and move for approval of CU/V-33-23 with the conditional use and variance approval limited to the design shown and discussed in the packet.
Condition number 1. Okay, we're ready for a vote.
Yes.
Ballard,
Yes.
Burrell. Clapper.
Yes. Okay, the variances are passed. Good luck, thank you. Okay. We are on to CU-35-23, Latitude 39 North Properties LLC. And is that petitioner on Zoom? Yes. Okay.
Thank you. Oh, Mr. Sturbaum, are those the ones that were already in the packet? Because if they're not, we have to keep them.
They are in the packet.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. I am starting this for Mr. Grulick tonight. Let's see what we've got here. The request before the Board of Zoning Appeals tonight is from Latitude 39 North Properties. The petitioner is requesting conditional use approval to allow a dwelling duplex use in the residential small lot R3 zoning district. The property is located at 1221 North Madison Street. You can see located here north of downtown. And you can see an aerial here. There was previously a building on site, and that was demolished with a demolition permit. It previously was a single-family residence at the location. The property is zoned R3, and northwest and east are mixed-use medium scale with more R3 to the south. Though the property is in the Maple Heights neighborhood, it is not located in the Maple Heights Historic District. So the petitioner is requesting to build a new duplex on the site. The residence would face Madison Street and be accessed by a driveway and parking area in the rear of the property. Each unit would have its own entry facing Madison with sidewalk connection, and the existing sidewalk on Madison is not currently in functional condition and so will need to be replaced with a new 6-foot wide sidewalk and street trees, which the petitioner has shown on the site plan. The new residences will be 2 stories with 3 bedrooms in each unit. Again, the petitioner has met the requirements of dwelling duplex. And let's see. Here are the renderings that were submitted. And for general compliance criteria, use specific standards that apply to dwelling duplex. As you might recall, in this zoning district especially, there are specific conditions that were put on by council when duplexes were allowed to be conditional, and those have been met. And those include separate utility meters, as well as bringing the petition forward here to the Board of Zoning Appeals as opposed to the hearing officer, and meeting with the neighborhood association. Additional criteria were submitted in the packet as well, and we can go over those if you have any questions. The department is recommending that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the proposed findings and approve CU 3523 with 2 conditions. That the conditional use approval is limited to the design shown and discussed in the packet, and that a 6-foot wide concrete sidewalk and street trees not more than 30 feet from center are required along the property frontage. And I or Mr. Grulick can answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So the petitioner,
Mr. Evans, you should be able to unmute.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
we can hear you. Could you please state your name?
Yes, Kaylin Evans.
And do you swear to tell the truth, or do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, you have up to 20 minutes to state your petition.
Thank you. I don't have a lot to add. I just appreciate Planning Department's help, Eric in particular, for walking me through this process for conditional use. This is my first BZA petition, and they've been very helpful, and glad to finally be here and have a chance to take a look at this. I did meet with the Maple Heights Neighborhood Association. They were very receptive and didn't pose any negative feedback towards the project, and were happy to have me at their meeting. And just in general, I think the design fits the scale and feel of that neighborhood, and lines up with the comprehensive plan goals for that particular area. There's been a lot of development along that West 17th Street corridor is kind of a major new corridor. This lot in particular is bounded on 3 of 4 sides by more commercial and multifamily development. So it's really kind of right on the fringe of it's R3 on one side and on this lot, but it really is more of a kind of an urban corridor. So that even the duplex scale is still much more in line with the neighborhood scale to the south than the commercial corridor to the north. So happy to answer any questions and appreciate the presentation of the material, but I think that's all I have to add.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. We're to the board for questions. Does anybody have any questions of staff or petitioner? No? Okay, no? Then we are to the public for any comment on this petition.
If you'd like to comment, you can raise your virtual hand or message the host.
Okay, great. So then we are back to you, Mr. Evans. If there's any last comments, this is your opportunity.
No, I don't think so. Thanks again for being here.
Okay, thank you. We are to the board for action.
I'll put a motion in front to approve CU-35-23. I was just looking for my conditions here, which are not in front of me, but with the conditions that were stipulated in the report.
Okay.
What page was that? And I will read it.
59?
59. It keeps flipping. Oh, it's on the screen?
Oh, there we are.
You think I can read that? How old do you think I am, Jackie? Got it. So I'll restate that. I move approval of CU-35-23 with the following conditions. 1, this conditional use approval is limited to the design shown and discussed in the packet. And 2, a 6-foot wide concrete sidewalk and street trees not more than 30 feet from center are required along the property frontage.
Do I have a second?
Second that.
Okay, I think Tim got in there. Okay, we're ready for a vote.
Yes.
Burrell. Clapper.
Yes.
Throckmorton.
Okay, the variances are approved. Good luck. Thank you. Okay, we are moving on to case AA-36-23, Indiana Army National Guard.
I just want to ask, is there a petitioner here from Indiana National, I'm sorry, is there a petitioner here for this petition on Zoom? If you are, could you send me a message or raise your hand, just so I know there's someone here? Perfect, he's here. Okay, I just wanted to make sure because I didn't have his name. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, so we're ready for the staff report. You're giving that?
It's me, yeah, just a
Okay,
sec, sorry.
thanks.
Okay, again, Jackie Scanlon, Development Services Manager. This is petition AA 3623 for the Indiana Army National Guard. The property is located just across the street here from City Hall at 414 North Morton Street. The property is a small portion of a much larger parcel that the former Smallwood is located on. It is zoned mixed-use downtown core overlay. Comprehensive plan designation is also downtown, and there is obviously existing office in this space where the National Guard leases space in the building. So the petition overview is that this is an administrative appeal of a notice of violation warning letter that was issued on March 28th of this year, 2023. So per 206080D1 of the UDO, the administrative appeal procedure is employed by the city in order to afford citizens an avenue of appeal when there is some doubt that an administrative official, hearing officer, staff member, administrative board, or other body except the Plan Commission has rendered a correct interpretation of the applicable ordinances and regulations while administering or enforcing of any part of this UDO. So in this case, as I said, a notice of violation was issued on March 28th, 2023 for prohibited signage. And then immediately thereafter, on April 7th, the petitioner filed an administrative appeal request. So these were the images that were included in the March 28th notice of violation. As you can see and could still see today, when you leave here and across the street, all of the window and door panes in the lease space for this leasee are covered with signage. So again, another picture that was included in the original notice of violation from March 28th. So UDO section 20.04.100C2, it does allow that window signs do not require a permit. However, they do have development standards. Window signs shall not exceed 25% of the glass area of any individual window or glass door frame and shall not count towards the wall sign allowance of the use or property. The assertion of the notice of violation is that the signage on site, seen here in these images that were included with the notice of violation, do not meet this particular code reference and therefore need to be removed. In accordance with the section listed here, because this is an administrative appeal, we will not make a formal recommendation, but I can answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The petitioner?
You should be able to unmute.
I unmuted myself.
Great.
Could you please state your name?
My name is First Sergeant Timothy Wayne Overdeen.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, you have up to 20 minutes to present your petition.
Okay, so I was notified by you guys that we had to remove our window wraps in accordance with like your city ordinance. And so here today, I'm just supposed to talk about like why I want to appeal to not have to remove the wraps. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure because we had like limited information on this situation. So the reason why we want to keep the wraps on the building is just for like the soldiers that work inside the building, like their physical safety and for security reasons. We've had attacks on our storefronts in the past, which resulted in a loss of life of Marines and other Army like recruiting personnel. So just for like security reasons, so the soldiers that work in that building can't be seen from the outside, we just wrap our windows just for safety issues. And I mean, that's really the only reason why we do it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your statement.
No problem.
Okay. So we are to the board for questions.
Yes, so the question that the city would be, if those same window wraps were replicated onto some kind of material that hung behind the windows inside, would that then be in compliance? Thank you, Jane.
Okay. Something hanging behind the window that could function for the need that Mr. Olberding has mentioned could be there. But those are signs. I mean, they're advertising what they're doing inside. So if it was, 2 inches behind the window, we would probably look at that against their wall signage allowance or against we would call them signs and then have to look and see if they are allowed by code.
I asked this, so, yeah, because I have a feeling I know where the petitioner would go with this, so I'll just jump in here and ask the city. So if there's imagery of people that are in uniform, that's considered a sign rather than just general imagery?
Yes, so typically,
I
obviously,
mean, I
it's
guess
like,
what I'm asking is, does there
Sure.
need to be some kind of an actual verbal, textual advertisement?
Correct. So the UDO does not require that it be text. So I can read you the definition of sign, just a second. And this is something we obviously go over a lot with property owners who want to do, for example, murals. For example, the mural they did at the Mother Bears near campus. If you look at it, it's actually like quite a bit of art, and then there's just a tiny bit that's very specific to Mother Bears, and that square footage, they had allowance to put signage. They couldn't have written like mother bears across because they didn't have enough square footage. So this is what the definition of sign is. Any display or device placed on a property in any fashion that can be seen from a public place or a public right-of-way that is designed, intended, or used to convey any identification, message, or information other than an address number. So if you are identifying what is going on inside of that building, we recognize that as signage. So if the issue is just for safety, like large, not blinds, but I'm sorry, my brain is. Shades. Thank you. Like large shades obviously would be allowed. What's there now is clearly advertising what they're doing inside, in our estimation.
The next question is for the petitioner, if he knows, many of those windows on those types of buildings are tinted in such a fashion it's difficult to see inside. So it is possible, I know, that you can put appliques onto the inside of those windows, and that's what allows you to see that, what's being referred to by the city as signage, those images. But if those images were not applied, it's also, in some cases, difficult to see inside the building. Is that the case with this particular building? It's right across the street from here, I believe.
Without the wraps that we put on the windows, it's easy to see who's inside and like see them moving around or sitting in there working, doing whatever that they do.
So there's no tinting at all to that window?
No, those were like clear glass windows with really no tint whatsoever. It was just like a car windshield. There was no tint to them.
Okay, thank you.
Are other films allowed? That are not, that other films that are, that aren't graphic in nature and don't meet the sign ordinance?
Eric, you might have to jump in here, because my brain is not remembering the exact reference, but the windows do have to be clear, whether or not we allow, in the downtown especially, on the first floor. Do we have buildings that don't meet that requirement? We definitely do. But Eric, would you be allowed to put like a film to make it be tinted?
Yeah, so there is a requirement for windows to be transparent in the downtown. However, there are also other alternatives that somebody could pursue if they wanted to provide security or privacy within the inside, such as hanging drapes in windows, which is seen in every residential apartment that has presence on the ground floor within the downtown. So there are other alternatives that could achieve the kind of security and privacy that the petitioner is mentioning is essential. But the display, as Mrs. Scanlon mentioned, of text and logos and images that are exclusive to the business and what they're advertising are clearly signage.
Can I, Eric, if the petitioner were to have sort of freestanding partitions with, that are essentially screens that are sitting inside the space that have images on them, that's within the space at that point, right? That's not, doesn't have the same impact.
It goes a little bit to the definition of sign that Mrs. Scanlon was mentioning, of signage that's intended to be seen from the outside. At some point, there is a distance from a window to where a sign is. Is that signage intended to be seen by people that are inside or by people that are outside? I don't, that's something that's subjective that we look at on a case-by-case basis. But there are certainly lots of other alternatives. They could put up partitions within the inside of the building, that would cover that view from the outside as well to provide the security. So there are lots of alternatives besides the signage that is wrapped around all the windows.
And I would add, we've had other locations, sometimes we do have to make a determination. What we have said in the past is that if it's clear that this wherever this image or wording has been put is so that it can be read from the outside, then that's a sign, and you're trying to have a window sign. We've had, even this year, we had a digital sign on the square where it was a few inches behind the glass pane on the road, and it was like no one in the store could see this or be absorbing these images. This is strictly for the people outside. This is a window sign. So we would have to kind of make that determination. And in this case, I mean, obviously, of course, the deliberations you have are totally up to you, but in this case, I think, I mean, for us, we would say that it's clear that they weren't meeting the requirement, and we'd be happy to work with them to see, what alternatives there are going forward.
So I thought you had used an actual distance when you said something like 2 inches or whatever initially. But so a solution could be that they could have freestanding or hanging posters that could be far enough away that if someone could walk between the window and those posters, that would be considered, and that would still meet the requirement. It would be like a petition or partition that had imagery on it, but it would be enough that someone could walk between, and it would not count as a sign for only outside.
In the past is, can the people inside of your business absorb the information on this sign? In which case, okay, then it is for them as well. And so, yes, if you could walk through, I think we would say, okay, that's fine. And that may not work for them. We don't know what the layout is inside, but we'd be happy to talk to them about other options.
Okay.
Is there a percentage that is allowed of,
Yes,
there are
for
several
each-
windows?
For 25%.
25% of,
So it's technically of each pane, but we work with petitioners occasionally where they have a number of panes and they want to, block off the 25% at one end. We have helped people do that in the past, if that makes more sense.
Do you mean they aggregate it and move it?
Yes, I'm sorry.
thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. Then we are to the public for any comment on this petition. Seeing nobody in chambers, is there
Nothing on
anyone
Zoom.
online? No one?
No one.
Okay. Then we are back to the petitioner for any further comments.
Okay, so the last comment I have is, you guys mentioned that the window wraps could have like the advertisement text to the public on the outside is like the issue here. What if we change the wraps to where the text is less than 25% of the window space on the windows? So there would be no more advertisement to the public that would be more than 25% of any of those windows.
We're open to discussing options, looking at other designs. But as Mr. Grulich explained, the transparent glass is one of the kind of supposed to be the hallmarks of the first floor of the downtown. So that's where we kind of run into that issue of allowing the wraps, but we would be happy to look at that. I mean, we'd be happy to look at it. I don't know if people know, but those windows are broken. Like there is, I'm sure, certainly a security issue there, and we want to respect that and help them figure out how to fix it. We just think that this is like wildly outside of the UDO, so we have to figure out a way to do that that's within the constraints.
Okay, so with this, I have a question for staff. Jackie, so with this administrative appeal, there's no monetary issue with this. We're not
It's
asked
just a
about
warning.
that. It's just okay.
Yep.
Okay. So I just want to make sure that the petitioner is done with your final comments. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
The last comment about the windows being broken, was that like the current state of our property?
Yes. Is that correct?
I couldn't hear.
Yeah.
I couldn't hear.
You want to know if it's the current state of the property, if the windows are currently broken.
Staff observed, because we were going to take current pictures, that there is boarding up there. So I don't know, maybe they're doing some work over there, but yeah, we we understand the concern.
Okay, thank you. Yes. So we are then back to the board for action.
Yeah, so before I make a motion, or someone makes a motion, I mean, it's a little sticky because we really don't have any latitude in this decision because there's no, there's nothing about the situation that we would find that gives us the ability to vary this. However, you know, what's difficult about it is I completely understand what's going on here, and I think the security issue could kind of start to creep into that category of a compelling reason to find a way to provide this a variance or this appeal. But I do think that what's really the most important here is if the city could really sit down and work with the petitioner to say, you can kind of get what you want, just do it this way, and we understand what you're doing, and we want to help you do it. I think that's what I'm hearing from the city.
Yes, I think we are that figuring out another way to help it be a secure facility if possible. Yeah.
And then again, just to clear up the reference to the cracked windows, you're saying that currently they're in that, there may be a cracked window or two over there, they're doing some work. So that's not part of what we're talking about here.
Unrelated to this, I'm mentioning it because, you know, if their concern is safety, we don't know why, but some of those windows are broken right now. They are boarded, and so.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, that does, again, provide that compelling reason of safety. And so I do think that.
Sure, so they may be able to request a variance. That would be something you could weigh.
And I think that's where I'm going. I was actually going to state, would it be possible for us to make a motion that this could remain in place until a solution is reached with the city? Not necessarily a variance, but an opportunity to work. But I mean, if the petitioner, they could withdraw this or want to do a variance, and then, or they can come back after this hearing for a variance, right?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what it would be. So in the initial notice of violations, you know, we typically say, stop doing the violation, or you can work with a planner to see if a variance is possible. And then there's always the option, or you can file an administrative appeal. And in this case, they chose option 3. But so we will just go back to typical enforcement and say, okay, do you want to take it down? If not, let's talk about, you know, potentially doing a variance. So we will keep working with them.
So all those options are on the table.
Yeah, and I'd be interested to know what a motion for the action of leave it as it is now, working with the city to reach a resolution so that, you know, they're not taking it down and there's exposed windows. I mean, that might, to me, seem to be a fair way to proceed, but there has to be a commitment to work with the city to get to.
But I'll say you're not deciding whether or not they have to take it down, right? You're not deciding whether
Right, I'm
you're
sorry.
deciding whether or not.
That's actually a better way to put it, because the question is how to do that to, you know, you would still say you would have to actually deny the administrative appeal because it can't, we don't have any grounds to grant it.
Right, so you're deciding whether or not they were in violation when we sent the notice of violation, and then we'll just put them back in the enforcement.
Right, and then they could work with you then to say, let's
Correct.
move forward.
Yep.
So that we can get a variance, okay. I just want to make sure that, it's sometimes confusing for me. I want to make sure it's not confusing for the
Definitely,
petitioner.
we will reach out to them either way after this, yep.
So, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at, Barry, is that it's just, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. So we just want to make sure that the petitioner understands the options after we render our decision tonight, that there will be the opportunity to work with planning to arrive at a solution that hopefully will meet the UDO requirements and, of course, meet your security needs as well.
And one of those possible solutions would be for you to return and ask for a variance to allow you to continue to use that signage on the windows. Is that correct?
Right. Potentially, yeah. Okay?
Yes, I completely understand what you guys are saying, and I'm more than happy to like meet with you or do whatever like in the future to like come up with a solution for this.
Great, thank you. Okay, so then we are to the board for action?
So with that, I'll pass for the denial of the administrative appeal AA-36-23.
Do I have a second?
Second that.
Okay, could we have a vote, please? Yes is for denial, just saying.
Burrell. Clapper.
Yes.
Throckmorton. Ballard.
Yes.
Okay, the administrative appeal is denied. Thank you. Okay, we are on to AA-38-23, Joseph Davis. This is another administrative appeal.
We cannot, so per the Board of Zoning Appeals rules, we can't hear new petitions after 8:30, and you end at 9. We have 2 petitions left. We would like to get through them if possible. We don't have to do that vote now. I'm just giving you a heads up that wherever we are, if we haven't started the last petition by 8:30, I will stop and ask you guys to discuss, and hopefully we will ask you to vote to unanimously vote to amend the rules to allow the last petition to be heard. So just a heads up on that. Okay. Oh, Gabriel, all right. Jackie Scanlon, Development Services Manager. This is petition AA-3823, and the petitioner is Joseph Davis. The property is at 530 South Washington. You can see located here just north of First Street on the west side of Washington, south of downtown. The property is roughly 0.15 acres, currently zoned R4 in the Mixed Urban Residential Comprehensive Plan designation area, and contains a single-family dwelling. The petition overview is that this is an administrative appeal of a notice of violation fine letter that was issued on August 17th, 2023. So again, just for clarity, the administrative appeal procedure is employed by the city in order to afford citizens an avenue of appeal when there is some doubt that an administrative official, hearing officer, staff member, administrative board, or other body except the Plan Commission has rendered a correct interpretation of the applicable ordinances and regulations while administering or enforcing of any part of the UDO. So a little history, just because I think this can get a little bit confusing because you have seen a similar request before. So Planning and Transportation and hand staff began receiving complaints about outdoor storage and garbage in July of 2021. Planning and Transportation sent a notice of violation near the end of August of 2021, notice of violation warning for outdoor storage. In the first quarter of 2022, planning observed that the property seemed to be moving toward compliance. I believe in February and March, the compliance officer went by the property and took photos. But by August of 2022, we had received additional complaints. So in October of 22, we issued a second notice of violation warning for outdoor storage, and this time also included parking on unimproved surface. And so then this body heard the administrative appeal of that particular notice of violation in November of 2022. And so then this body denied that request in February. The petitioner filed the administrative appeal in November of 22, and then this body denied that administrative appeal in February of this year, so about 9 months ago. So now we're in the summer of this year, June of 2023. The hand department staff visited the site and took photographs that demonstrated that the violations listed in the 2022 notice of violation were still ongoing. So here you can see a vehicle with quite a bit of storage as well. So these were the images that were taken, some of the images that were taken. So again, storage materials, this tower, radio tower situation, building materials being stored outside still. All things that had been addressed, had been an ongoing issue since the 2021 notice of violation. So another vehicle here parked in the backyard. So in August of 23, a notice of violation fine letter was issued for outdoor storage and parking on an unimproved surface. So by this point, typically, this is not required by code, but typically the way we do enforcement is we warn first and sometimes repeatedly, and then we go to fines. So the fine letter that was sent in August, the fine total, though it was over $7,000, was only for 2 days. You know, we're not trying to get money out of this. We're trying to get compliance. So But at this point, this is where we are. So we escalated from the warnings to the fine letters. On August 25th of this year, the petitioner filed an administrative appeal request. So these were some of the images that were in the August 17th notice of violation, the same from earlier. So again, all three vehicles that are in the back were in the backyards. There were three vehicles in the backyard, so parking on unimproved surface for those three. And then outdoor storage of quite a bit of material, some of it building material, some of it housing material, these bathtubs, as you can see, concrete mixer, parts of windows, lots of things outside, including lots of wood and metal pieces as well. So for parking on unimproved surface, UDO section 20.03.030 E1 contains this section that says vehicles and trailers shall not be stored or parked on an unimproved surface. Additionally, and this isn't in the notice of violation, but stored or parked vehicles shall not be used for other purposes, including but not limited to living quarters or storage of materials. We don't believe that these buildings are being used as living quarters. I mean, these vehicles, but they are full or piled with things being used for storage. Related to the outdoor storage portion of the notice of violation, section 20.03.030E1C indicates that in all zoning districts where this use is allowed except for the MI zoning district, outdoor storage of equipment, materials, waste, or scrap materials and pallets is prohibited. And then there's a definition for outdoor storage, and it indicates the allowance of material being left out no longer than 24 hours. So since the time of the notice of violations issuance and the appeal, hand staff has gone by the property to take ongoing pictures to see if the property is moving toward compliance, because there is also an issue going on with the title that hand is responsible for, and that goes to Board of Public Works and is not related to outdoor storage of items, but related to trash on the property. So you can see here in the picture on the right, the petitioner is moving toward cleaning up portions of the property, and pictures on the left, a porch full of things. That's storage is required to be within enclosed structures. So none of that can't remain. So some parts of the property improving, others not so much. So these pictures are from early September. And again, you can see this truck is not parked on an improved surface. We see the outdoor storage of these metal grates, lots of 2x4s, things that could be used for something, which is great, but they need to be stored inside, per the UDO. So again, these two pictures more relevant to the parking on unimproved surface. We have a yellow vehicle here, a truck, and a blue van. And you can see this van. It is piled high with insulation and other wooden materials. That just does not meet code and is not appropriate. So again, more pictures from a September 5th visit. There's a trailer in the backyard as well, again, piled with materials, and then materials hanging off of the roof of the front porch on the Washington Street side. More pictures just of the property and the types of items that are stored outside. So in this image, you can see all three vehicles. I want to let you know, because we have been hearing some discussion. We have been working with Mr. Davis now for a couple of years. We issue outdoor storage and parking on unimproved surface notice of violations regularly if they're drawn to our attention, right? So in 2022, we issued only 2 outdoor storage notice of violations and 16 parking on unimproved surface violations. In 2023, 17. In 2023, we issued 5 outdoor storage notice of violations thus far, and we've issued 4 of parking on unimproved surface. So you've heard me say this before, but we don't always have a lot of staff people. So we've had 1 enforcement person the entirety of this year until a couple of weeks ago. So our numbers ebb and flow. But the point is that when we receive complaints, we address them. And Typically, what happens is that someone works with us and then meets the requirements of the code, and we move on. And if that doesn't happen, then we will refer those cases to the legal department, and they will file against the property owner to try to achieve compliance. So, for example, we have one in the pipeline now that we've referred to legal, where we have reached out and tried to work with the property owner. It has not worked out. It's causing issues for the neighbors, and so our only recourse is to have legal potentially file something in court to get their compliance. So in this case, we got to the point where we issued a notice of violation of fines. I think that the images indicate that that notice of violation was valid. I do think that Mr. Davis feels that he is working with the departments toward compliance, and that's great. But that isn't the purview of the question before you tonight. It's whether or not that notice of violation was valid when it was issued. Were we correct in our interpretation of the code that he has 3 vehicles parked in his backyard and that he has tons of things that he's storing outside in his yard at his home? And so we think that those things are true. Another thing that may come up is that Mr. Davis has a building permit for an accessory building in the backyard, which is accurate and valid. Whether or not he has started that, I don't know. But that it does not mean that you can store everything that you could possibly use for that construction site in your yard. That's just not how that typically goes, and it's not compliant with the UDO. So we are planning to work with Mr. Davis, similar to the other situation. You know, the question before you, as it was in February, is, was this notice of violation issued appropriately? And if you say either way, whether or not you say, we will keep working with Mr. Davis to have the property come into compliance. So per the code reference on the screen, as similar to the other administrative appeal, because this is an administration, because it's an administrative appeal, we do not make a formal recommendation, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you. No idea. I don't know what that is. I wonder if it's a light. I don't think there's anything we can do about it.
Will the petitioner?
Sorry, Ms. Klepper, because the petitioner has 20 minutes and it's only 11 minutes until 8:30, do we want to go ahead and address the
Yes.
rules vote? Okay, thank you.
So are we in agreement to continue hearing this case? And we need to make a motion to suspend our rules. We have this case and we have one case after that.
Yep.
Is everybody open to suspending our rules to hear both of those cases this evening? Yes? Okay.
So
Okay.
I'll move to suspension of rules.
Okay. I'll second it. Second it? Can we have a vote, please?
Throckmorton. Yes. Ballard.
Yes.
Burrell. Yes. Clapper.
Yes. Okay, thank you. So we are now ready to hear from the petitioner. If you'd like to step to the lectern. And we'll need you to sign in as well. It's the light. So strange, that's noisy. Could you please state your name?
Yes. My name is Joseph Bradley Davis.
And you were already sworn in from earlier, so no need to do that again.
Okay,
20 minutes to state your petition.
thank you. Yes, I'm mostly known as Joe Davis, and I'm an artist and a natural builder and a community activist and caretaker of my community. Thank you very much for allowing me to make a presentation today. For over a year and a half, I have been asking for members of HAND and members of Planning and Transportation to come onto my property and point out specifically which items are or are not in compliance with Title VI of the Sanitation Code and also Title 20 of the UDO. I have not received responses from emails, voicemails, certified letters, where people would come onto my property until just 2 weeks ago, with the assistance of Ms. Kate, head of City Legal. We pulled together the heads of HAND, John Zodi, the head of Planning and Transportation, Scott Robinson, Ms. Kate herself, representing City Legal, and also the head of the Monroe County Building Department, Bobby LaRue. We all met 2 weeks ago on Thursday at my property. Also in attendance were Anna Killian Hansen, Assistant Director of HAND, and also 3 members of the public, Kathy Meyer, Mark Haggerty, Jamie Scholl, and as well Dave Askins, representing the media, the Bloomington Beacon. So we all assembled on my property, and we went through and talked about my outdoor items, including my installed art installation, which you saw at the front of my property, and also the building materials and building tools that I have at the back of my property in order to support my construction activities that are taking place there. I have not only a building permit from the Monroe County Building Department, but also a certificate of zoning compliance for my proposed 2-story structure from Planning and Transportation. And I believe in your packet, you might have seen Gabriel Holbrough's images from my certificate of zoning compliance, which showed specifically some of the building materials that are going to be incorporated into my structure. And those images that were just shown, that were taken earlier in the summer and fall, do show those very same building materials. So we had a productive afternoon. We were there for everyone was there for about an hour to hour and 15 minutes. Anna Killian Hansen documented the entire exchange of information, both information coming from the various city officials and also coming from myself and also from members of the public, trying to consolidate and clarify these 2 disparate issues that both address the material possessions that I have on my lot. City Legal has acknowledged that Hand's notices of violation are referring to the exact same materials that Planning and Transportation's notices of violation are referring to. So during this afternoon, we were able to set up some steps to move forward. John Zodi is going to be coming onto my property with other members of Hand. We're setting up an appointment for probably the following week. And also, Scott Robinson has directed me to make an appointment with the planning department, and I have reached out to Eric Grulich, and we're setting up an appointment for me to provide an inventory of my building materials, which are being utilized in my construction activities, and also addressing the issue of allegedly parking on unimproved surfaces. During that same week that we had this meeting of the minds between these department heads, I also met with Gabriel Holbrow in Planning and Transportation to get clarification on the ability to park one's vehicles on gravel, because my vehicles are on improved surfaces, it's gravel. It's allowed under the UDO, Title 20, to park one's vehicles on a gravel improved surface. Permeable surface especially is important in our neighborhood, and my particular lot in particular, because at the front of that lot, it is at the same level as South Washington Street. But at the back of my lot, it falls one story. And so therefore I have a walkout garage. But there is a considerable amount of water that flows from the top of my property to the bottom. And so having permeable surfaces is vitally important for that groundwater infiltration. Now, it might have appeared in some of those images that the surface wasn't improved, but there are leaves on the ground. I have been actively raking those leaves away, digging up the graveled soil that is beneath those vehicles, and screening it to remove the gravel so that it's apparent, to remove the gravel from the soil that is infiltrated, and separating out that soil to be used as, landscaping soil, and then have the gravel put back in place so it's clearly evident that it is a permeable graveled surface. I believe in the packet, I sent along a few emails from some of my supporters that pointed out many of the graveled lots that are in my neighborhood, directly adjacent and, within the many blocks that surround. And certainly when I meet with Eric Grulich in planning, we're going to address a procedure for more clearly identifying or grandfathering in the current use of gravel in my lot. And I would like to point out that my house was built in 1925. At that time, it was a period where Model Ts or Model A vehicles were parked in the underneath of those houses. The same situation is going to apply to my residence as well. I'm installing double doors such that I could move a vehicle in there. And so therefore, from the 1920s on, there has always been gravel that has met the back of my house, clear to the alley behind, which separates me from the Arby's parking lot. So, at any rate, a process has been put in motion with both hand and planning and transportation. We are moving forward, identifying which items are compliant in so much as that they are the building materials that I am going to be actively employing. If I wasn't spending all of my time trying to protect my building materials from being taken away from me, then I probably would have made more progress in my backyard. But the video that Anna Killian Hansen took on the 2nd of this month is going to have the most accurate information as to the condition of my property and how things currently look. These images that you've seen tonight are extremely stale. They in no way represent the current condition of my property. The best document would be to watch the video in its entirety that Anna Killian took, and you can see how we agreed amongst all of us to move forward such that we can finally find some resolution and understanding. And I'm very hopeful that we're going to be successful in that. However, this is a process, and certainly these notices of violation that have been sent to me are a part of the process. But prior to that, I had made numerous requests for the individual attention that finally took place on the 2nd of November. So we're in a new period of being able to move forward constructively. And so what I would like the board to consider is that this is an update tonight as to where we stand. It's not a complete full update because there were materials that I would have submitted had I known that we were going to proceed with this adjudicative forum this evening. I would have presented those further in advance, but I was really only notified as of Friday that the board packet was prepared by Ms. Scanlon. So I humbly ask that the board see that there is forward progress now that communication is truly happening directly and not just a presentation of a vaguely written ordinance that does not address the specifics of my given situation. So I believe the best approach would be for these meetings between myself and Hand and myself and Planning and Transportation be allowed to continue, because with that, there'll either be progress and resolution in a positive or essentially, if there still would remain disagreement, then at that time it would be appropriate to go before the adjudicative boards of the Board of Zoning Appeals and the Board of Public Works. But at the current moment, we are making progress, and that progress should be allowed to continue. it's important that due process be followed, and that I, as a petitioner and as a resident of this community, be allowed to put my best foot forward to achieve any alleged noncompliance and to ensure that the working relationship between myself and the city of Bloomington continues in a positive manner. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them at this time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Davis. Okay, we are to the board for questions.
I'm going through the packet here. Did I see that this was, was this petition continued from last month?
No.
This is new?
This is
Okay,
new.
then I saw that on a different piece. Thank you.
Yeah.
It was going to appear, and then it did not.
I'm sorry?
Got
Okay,
continued.
I'm trying to understand, just based on the statement, that this was the first time, he was only notified 2 or 3 days ago about this meeting.
It was, the petition was continued from the October meeting.
Okay, so theoretically, we were going to have this session a month ago. Thank you.
Correct. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was in the packet last month. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That must be where I read it.
Yeah. Any questions of the staff or petitioner?
I'll just quickly ask Jackie, what is your response to this idea that progress is being made? How would you characterize it from the city side? We've heard from the petitioner.
Well, a couple things. I'll say, first thing is, if that's true, that's fine. It doesn't have anything to do with the NOV and whether or not it was issued appropriately. And then on the other fork, I'll say, I do think, Mr. Davis has been asking, individual attention was a term he used that's very apropos in this situation. He has been asking for a lot of individual attention. And Mr. Grulich has volunteered to go out and help him understand what is not compliant. So I do think that will help move it forward. And I will say to the, contention that, there was so much time spent contacting us and asking us to tell him exactly what to change, that, he had filed an appeal. So if you're appealing a notice of violation that we have issued, then enforcement stops. Enforcement goes on hold. So if you're stipulating that you aren't violating the code, then we wait to see if the Board of Zoning Appeals agrees with you before we expend very precious staff time to help you understand why we think you are not in violation. If you all agree that we issued the notice of violation correctly, as you did in February, then that's fine. Mr. Grulich has already agreed to help out in the way that Mr. Davis would prefer.
So just to be absolutely clear, so all the work will continue after a decision is rendered this
Yes, so very similar to the previous administrative appeal, the enforcement is ongoing. And if you all decide that the notice of violation, if you deny the appeal, we just keep working with Mr. Davis toward compliance.
Thank you. Anything else? Tim? Flavia, you're good? Okay, so we are to the public for any comments on this petition. Is there anybody here this evening who would like to comment?
Don't see anyone on Zoom.
Nobody is on Zoom. Okay, then we are back to the petitioner. You have some remaining minutes if you'd like to have any further comments. This is the opportunity.
Well, I guess I would like to clarify a few things as to the alleged notices of violation, I know that there have been a lot of dates thrown around in the most recent notice of violation from Planning and Transportation that was issued on August 17th. That references notice of violation from back in 21 that had been addressed and resolved, to my knowledge, from Elizabeth Carter. However, I did meet with Ms. Scanlon back just a few days before this was first supposed to go before the BZA 1 month ago. I was looking for clarification. I was wanted to point out that Ms. Carter had indicated that past notice of violation was closed, but however, Ms. Scanlon said that actually it wasn't closed because they didn't have the personnel to close it. But I was never notified of that. It was just, if it was left open, I should be notified that it's still open so that I could address it appropriately. Well, from that time forward, when this Planning and Transportation notice of violation was very first issued back in, the later one back in August of 2022, again, I made multiple requests to Planning and Transportation for clarification, including certified letters that were sent. And Ms. Scanlon said that the reason that they didn't answer any of those certified letters was because they were waiting to see how things played out with Hand first. So what am I to do when all of that time I basically am twisting in the wind without any clarification? So of course I'm super excited that we had this meeting on November 2nd, and that just a couple of days before, Gabriel Holbrow explained to me what the parameters of acceptable gravel parking surfaces entails, because finally, progress toward compliance or the dispelling of a lack of compliance is happening. And it's been a long year and a half, a very long year and a half, and I wish for resolution as much as anyone. So with that, I kindly ask you to continue this issue down the road to the next BZA and consider this an update so that when we come back, we can more efficiently spend each other's time, because time is a valuable resource which none of us wishes to waste. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Okay, so we are back to the board for action. And just to restate, Jackie, what you said is that the resolution here tonight will allow the process to move forward. Us rendering a decision will then allow, hopefully, that resolution that everybody is seeking to happen in the near future, right? Okay.
But
We're deciding on whether the notice violation is proper.
That's the only thing we're looking at, right?
It's the only decision in front of us.
But because, yes, that's the decision before us, but because this appeal was issued, the process stops. So now, with our decision, the process can restart.
Begin again, yeah.
Yeah.
Understood.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so I am ready for a motion if there's not further discussion.
I'm going to motion denial of administrative appeal AA-38-23.
Do I have a second? Any further comment? We're ready for a vote?
Clapper.
Yes.
Throckmorton.
Yes.
Ballard.
Yes.
And Burrell.
Yes.
Okay, so the administrative appeal is denied, but the process can now move forward towards some resolution. Okay?
The appeal is denied.
The appeal is denied.
Does that mean that the fines are?
It says in the letter, but you would have to appeal the fine to the courts.
Yeah, we don't have anything to do with the fine. So now the work can be done toward bringing your property into compliance.
I'm confused about these fines.
Okay, well, Eric can explain it to you when you guys
Yeah,
meet. Yeah,
that-
this board doesn't have the
It's not our
authority
purview.
to.
It's not our purview to help you.
Release fines.
Yeah, we can't provide any further clarification because that's not something that we deal with, that we look at. So you'll have to work with Eric to achieve an understanding of how to handle those. Okay?
I'm still very confused, but I'm hoping that Eric will be able to
Okay. Great.
provide more
Okay.
information. Thank you.
Thank you. We wish you best of luck with getting everything sorted out. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go into the sixth petition, but then we need you all to vote on the findings of fact for the two administrative appeals as well. But I think we should, if it's okay with you, Colleen, go ahead to the sixth petition because he's been waiting, and then do the administrative appeal findings of fact, which you'll recall we started doing that last month, that we adopt findings of fact after administrative appeal, very basic findings of fact, like this is when the NOV was issued, this is what it was
Okay.
for.
So do you want to do that now?
I would like to do the sixth petition first, if that's okay. 'cause
Okay,
he's
that's
been waiting.
fine, and do
Okay,
that at the
great.
end.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Everybody okay?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So our next case is V-40-23, Scott Andrews. And we'll give Mr. Davis just a minute here to get his things together, and then we'll ask for a staff report. Okay. We are ready for the staff report whenever. Is that you, Jackie?
It's Mr. Grulich.
It's Mr. Grulich.
Thank you, everybody. So this is a request, was mentioned, for variance from landscaping requirements for interior parking islands and a variance from maximum parking standards for a fitness center, small use in the mixed-use medium scale zoning district. So the board might recognize this location. This was heard previously by the board for a property at 122 East Miller Drive that is undergoing a process for a change in use review to allow for a new use, the fitness center small use, to move in here for a cheerleading school. And so we've been working through this petition site for various items to bring it into compliance with the limited compliance standards of the UDO. One of those is the property must come into compliance with the maximum number of parking spaces that are allowed. The board heard this petition previously and approved a variance to allow for 31 parking spaces. So this was based on various information that the petitioner submitted in relation to a parking study analyzing the amount of staff and students that were at another location here in Bloomington, and then as well as the number of parking spaces that were utilized during the course of a week every day for the different events and activities that occur here. And so the petitioner has received that approval, but they are requesting a new approval today to allow for 35 parking spaces and then also to not require any of the interior parking islands. So this variance would grant an additional 4 spaces, but not require any additional islands within the parking area. So as we did discuss last time with not just the parking study, but also this unique use that is different than a typical fitness center. These have very specific classes that are filled to capacity, have very high staffing needs for each of those occasions. There is not on-street parking along Miller Drive and does not appear to be any publicly accessible shared parking locations immediately adjacent to this to provide for flexibility in the ebb and flow of parking needs throughout the course of the week for these events. So the board did find last time that the amount of parking that would be allowed by the code did not adequately meet the needs of this specific use. So again, here is the parking study that was submitted. It showed a range of parking needs ranging from 19 up to 44 or some types 53 parking spaces that were used. So the parking spaces used, in the other locations looked at, situations where cars had just been parked on streets and adjacent parking areas, anywhere and everywhere that they could get a car. So they had demonstrated maybe previously that they needed more parking spaces, and so the petitioners have come forward again to seek additional parking spaces on this site while not requiring the islands. So as we did make findings for previously and again tonight, this is a unique use that is different than what the UDO anticipated. They have provided a parking study showing a demonstrated need for these additional spaces. And this is a unique situation in several regards in that it is a small number of parking spaces that we are looking at and a very small site. And so the opportunities to get more parking on this site are very limited, and that does create a practical difficulty in providing those parking spaces. The lack of the 3 interior islands, again, will have a very negligible impact. And so we do find that it meets the criteria set forth in the Unified Development Ordinance to recommend approval of the variance from the maximum number of parking spaces and a variance from the interior islands. And we are recommending that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt these findings and approve the variance with the 1 condition that are listed in staff's report. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Eric. The petitioner, if you could step to the lectern, please, and sign in.
That's okay. Don't worry about it. So,
Could you state your name?
oh, Scotty Andrews.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, you have up to 20 minutes to present your petition.
So thank you very much for extending the meeting. I greatly appreciate it. I'll make it short and sweet. I've owned the building for 38 years. When I moved in, I had Indiana gymnastics and cheerleading. It moved on to the Iron Pit, and now it's back to cheerleading. The only reason why I'm having to go in front of the commission is because the building was empty for more than a year. The property is 0.9 acres. I have over 28 trees, 250 bushes and shrubs and what have you there. And the most important thing is that I know for a fact, because I had the exact same business, that she needs every single space that is there. And that's one reason she signed the lease. She proved that she needs the space by doing the study. And the reason why I mention the landscaping is because I don't want to take away parking spaces from her, and I don't want to have to invest more money into putting in more trees and bushes, what have you, within those islands. Because anybody that goes by the building can see that no other 0.9 acre property has 28 trees and all the plantings that I have as well. But again, sticking to the point, she needs the parking to do the business. And I've been by there the last 2 nights. The parking lot is packed. And again, it is a very unique situation in that it's not just a gym where young people go and leave their car and then come back within the hour, what have you. If you go, you will see parents sitting in their car for an hour, hour and a half while their children go in, and they're not leaving the parking spot. So everything is taken up. IU Health is a great neighbor, but they don't want her clients parking in their lot either. So I would appreciate if I didn't have to install the additional islands and landscaping. So tried to make that short. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we are to the board for questions of petitioner or staff. Any questions? No questions? No questions, Tim?
No, I'm good.
Okay, then we are to the public. Is there anybody here this evening who would like to speak to this petition? I do not see anyone. Is there anybody online?
No comments yet on Zoom. If you would like to send a comment to speak. I don't think we have anyone. Thank you.
Okay, then we are back to the petitioner.
We just got one.
Oh, we got somebody.
Is Anne Marie? Okay, just a moment. You should be able to unmute.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can. Can you please state your name?
Yes, Anne Marie Bowling.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You have up to 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you. I represent IU Health, and we are an adjacent property owner to Scott's property. As he mentioned previously, his parking lot abuts up to our parking lot. And he's done a great job with the property. The building in itself looked amazing before all of the required enhancements. But I do support his petition and request for the additional parking spaces because, to his point, his clients will just end up parking in our parking lot. That will end up being a potential liability for IU Health, in addition to additional costs on repair and maintenance of our parking lot. So just here to support Scott and the decision to allow him additional parking.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Send me a message or raise your virtual hand. I don't see anyone else. Thank you.
Okay. So we are then back to the petitioner, who has nothing more to add. Okay, so we are back to the board for action.
I'll go ahead and place before discussion a motion, or do you want to?
Please.
Okay, place a motion to approve V-40-23 with the following condition: that this variance is valid for this use and user as presented only. Any new use or change in use must meet all standards of the UDO, which includes removal of parking spaces over the allowed maximum.
You have a second?
Second.
And I have a friendly amendment to the proposed finding number 3 for interior islands, to add that as kind of a unique condition or peculiar condition that the property is landscaped heavily.
So we have, yes, and
So
that
you-
friendly amendment is accepted. Thank
Yes.
you, Jackie.
Thank you. Okay. If there are no more comments, I think we are ready for a vote.
Throckmorton. Ballard.
Yes.
Burrell. Yes. Clapper.
Yes. Okay, the variance is approved, or the variances are approved. So congratulations and good luck. And then we have a little bit of business still.
Okay, so you'll recall we did this last month. So these are findings of fact for the first administrative appeal that we heard tonight. So I will go ahead and read them out loud. The first is, so these are our proposed findings, and of course you can amend or change them however you'd like. UDO section 20.04.100 C2E only allows 25% of a window or door frame to be covered. The petitioner installed signage that completely covers multiple window and door frames. The signage was observed and photographed by city staff on February 24th of 2023. A notice of violation was sent March 28th, 2023. As a result, the signage does not comply with UDO section 20.04.100 C2E.
So we need a motion to adopt the findings of fact?
Yes.
Okay.
So moved.
There's a second. We're ready for a vote?
Ballard.
Yes.
Burrell. Clapper.
Yes.
Throckmorton.
Yes.
That is approved.
Okay. And this is for the second administrative appeal we saw for Mr. Davis. The proposed findings of fact are UDO section 20.03.030 prohibits in all zoning districts except MI the outdoor storage of equipment, materials, waste, or scrap materials and pallets. That UDO section 20.03.030E1A prohibits the storage or parking of vehicles or trailers on unimproved surfaces. That a notice of violation warning for outdoor storage of materials was issued on October 20th, 2022, and that city staff observed and photographed outdoor storage of materials and parking on an unimproved surface at 530 South Washington Street on June 23rd of 2023, and that a notice of violation was sent on August 17th of 2023, and that as of the date of the notice of violation and this hearing, the property has not been brought into compliance and there remain outdoor storage of materials and parking on unimproved surfaces, and that the property remains in violation of both UDO sections referenced above.
So moved. Have a second? Second. Okay.
Burrell. Yes. Clapper.
Yes.
Throckmorton.
Yes.
Ballard.
Yes.
Okay. We are adjourned.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Tim.